Fellas, the finale, the final hurdle. We've made it. There are no more superlatives to give out. All we need to do is spend less than 5 hours talking about our favorite albums of the year.
We are guaranteed to do that
because
we're only talking about the top 5.
We got it.
Yeah, we set the bar quite high the past few years and learned from our mistakes that, unfortunately, as much as we would like to talk, we don't shut up. As much as we would like to talk about our entire top 10 lists, the reality is, we have other things that we need to do in this life, and I'm sure that people listening to this podcast also have other things they need to do in this life. And a 5-hour podcast, I don't think is very healthy for anyone. So we have shaved down this final episode of our award series to just our top 5 albums of 2024. So to go over the rules, since this episode is going to work a little differently from our past ones, what we have going on is for our number 4 and our number 5 picks, if any of those albums overlap through our 10 through 4, we are going to mention that there is an overlap. If an album is in any of our top 3s, we are going to keep our mouth shut because top 3s are special. So hypothetically, I think in previous years, To Better Days by Slaves was like barely made someone's top 10, or I remember Justin, Bad Omens was like your number 7 or number 8 or something, but it was my album of the year. So I kept my mouth shut when you mentioned it at your number 7 or number 8 because it was my album of the year. That's how that works. We just want to give each of us the time to talk about our top 3 without kind of merging discussions, because top 3 albums, it felt like the best cutoff point that we could give it. I think that's about it, though. So other than narrowing down this episode to be shorter and how the overlap mentions are going to work, we have at most 20 albums to talk about. And
apart from like the what,
I don't
think we're going to be talking about 20. So let's jump right into it then. We're going to reveal the full top 10s before our number 1. So I'm not going to reveal what my 10 through 6 are before going into this. My number 5 album of 2024 goes to one of multiple debut albums in my top 10. Goes to Second Shadow by Inertia.
Check it
Check
off.
mark that one.
Check it off.
Yep. Good job.
Go.
Good job, fellas. You got one. So yeah, Inertia. This is their debut album following up their phenomenal EP from 2022, which made one of my top EPs of that year. I don't remember exactly where, but it was a phenomenal EP. And they came out swinging this year. Lead single Dominion, straight into the I'm Fucking Pissed playlist. And then as the singles kept on rolling out and as the album eventually came, one of my favorite metalcore albums that I have heard all year. From first listen, I knew this was going to land somewhere in my top 10. I knew it wasn't going to be right at the tippy top, but I knew it was without a doubt one of the best albums I've heard all year. To go into specifics, there's a couple of songs. Obviously, realistically, I like every song on all of these top 5 albums, and I think it's going to go for all of us. Like, they wouldn't be this high if we didn't like or love most of these albums. So, I would say my top 3 songs on this album are Leviathan, Dying to Let You Go, and then In Rapture. 3 phenomenal metalcore songs. Generally blending harsh vocals with incredible cleans throughout each one of those songs. Leviathan, you get the feature from Jacob Charlton of Thornhill. He does the bridge into the breakdown, and then they layer their vocals into that final chorus. It's just beautiful. To go into the lyrical content of this album, Second Shadow, as far as I'm concerned, is an album dealing with relationships and falling out and feeling powerless in a relationship, so to say, is like becoming the shadow in the relationship, where in a relationship things should be fairly equal. Like, you might do something for someone that you don't want to do, but that should be reciprocated back. Whereas that feeling of feeling like a shadow, feeling like your value in the relationship doesn't matter as much, that's the general vibe lyrically that I got from this album. I'm just going to mention a couple of them. In Leviathan, the chorus of that song is hard. It's getting harder just to feel something, but I don't want to live this way. I'm living in a world of gray, which I think potentially a loose connection to the fact that shadows are like reflections caused by light, generally appear black or gray on the ground or on walls or on a surface, whatever. Then in Dominion, systematic suffering is part of the game, symptomatic, everyone's got something today. I wish you could feel the way I do, of reaching that point of realization that you are not in power and control, like you're being degraded in the relationship, and saying, I want you to understand how bad this feels. Not to mention that line delivery, the systematic suffering is part of the game, symptomatic, everything's got something. The delivery on that is fucking beautiful. One of my favorite vocal deliveries on the album. Second Shadow, the title track, take what you want from me, I've given you everything, it's never enough. I know I'll never be who you want me to be, a promise that I'll break. Again, just diving into that lyrical theme again. And then you get to the end of the album. I can barely see who I'm supposed to be, I'll stare into the sun to find you again. I think trying to harken back to the better days of the relationship, of when things were good before you realized how bad things actually were, and longing for how things used to be. This isn't an album that I necessarily listened to for that story, but I think the fact that it is able to tell a story, and that through a fairly surface level listening, I was able to pick on these details of there's loss and trauma and relationship and the struggle, that like you can feel that in the lyricism and in the vocal delivery. And I think it was really well done. Instrumentally, this album is just as phenomenal as all of the things I've had to praise about the vocals and the lyrics. Dying to Let You Go has one of my favorite breakdowns of the year at that minute 30-second mark. It fucking rips. Dominion as well, the heaviest song on this album, straight into the I'm Fucking Pissed playlist, as I already mentioned. You get a beautiful transition from Counterfeit into Leviathan, and then you also get another transition from Decompose into Too Far Gone at the back of the album. And I think making those seamless transitions from songs a rarity and not something that you expect to make those moments hit even more. I remember this is like way back, but I want to say Holding Absence on their 2021 album. Almost every song flowed seamlessly one into the other, and you never really got a moment to breathe, because it was just, it never stopped. Even if some of their songs were slower, you never got that full silence, where I think having those extended moments listening to the album, but then also you do get just a song, and then like it fades in, it fades out, and getting that breathing room, I definitely think helps, especially on an album like this that can get so heavy and so fast at times. But yeah, in Rapture, also absolutely phenomenal instrumentally. Second Shadow and The Seeds That You Never Sow, not my favorite songs on the album, but again, have some incredible moments instrumentally. The breakdown on Second Shadow reminds me a lot of Wishful Sinking by Bless the Fall. It has like a somewhat distorted guitar where it feels like it's just going back and forth. Just the production on that is super cool. Yeah, overall, why this lands in my top 5 but not any higher is I think the 4 albums above it did a lot of these things better. But I also feel like there are some songs on here that I just haven't resonated with as much. When it comes down to narrowing down the top 5, the general thing that determines what puts one album above another is the floor. Because all of these albums have some of the highest peaks of any album I've heard this year. It's not about how high do you peak, it's about how far low do you go. And while this album it still has a very high floor, I think the albums above it have higher floors. Songs like Static, Replicant, Decompose, I didn't resonate with that much. They did not get stuck in my head the way that a lot of the rest of the album did. And the albums that I've ranked higher than this have less songs that I feel that way about. Like Replicant and Decompose, I really had to listen to a couple of times throughout the week to try and get them stuck in my head to where I could look at the song and think of what that song sounds like in my head. Whereas with the albums above this, I can look at the entire track list and I know what every single song sounds like just off of looking at the song name. I can't say that about every song on this album, unfortunately. I can say that for most, but not all of them. And that was why it ended up here at my 5th spot. And yeah, another reminder, this is a debut album, which is unbelievable to think about. I've had debut albums in my top 10s for years and years at this point, but it needs to be mentioned how impressive it is to release a debut album this strong, especially in metalcore, which is fairly oversaturated. And in general, a common trend throughout all of our monthly recaps this year is that metalcore was not that impressive. Inertia managed to shine through the cracks, not only as a metalcore band, but on their debut album, which is, as I have said multiple times over, truly impressive. So yeah, that's all I have to say. Justin, I'm going to pass it over to you, unless you guys have any thoughts on this album that you want to share.
It's a banger.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
All right, Justin.
Cool. My number 5 is Makari with their album Wave Machine.
Really?
We whiffed on this one.
When we were looking through like the albums that released this year, I saw it on my list and I'm like, would he put it? And I'm like, no, I don't think so. Now it's in top 5.
Yeah.
I'll take responsibility for that one.
That's a high ranking album, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So explain why is this so high, and how could we have missed it? What, like, clearly we did not see the signs that you were in love with this album this much.
So I need to preface this year by saying this is the year I have least listened to music since we started the podcast. Where like I think 2020 was my second least listened to music that year. And it just boils down to a lot of my music time this year was during work. To focus, to concentrate, I would just put on whatever albums, and I would, go back and forth between old albums, listen back to Without a Sound from Speech Patterns, Unimagined by Hands Like Houses. But the one album this year that I continued to listen throughout the entire year during work was Wave Machine. It is, to me, one of the happiest albums with like the most excited instrumentation with the saddest lyrics, because you get like a lot of mental health stuff all throughout the album. Seems pretty coded in like nearly every song you get. But it's one of those albums that you listen to on first listen, it's just going to stick with you. There's a lot of catchy songs in this. Eternity Leave, Closer, Breakers, Soul Stealer is probably my favorite off this album. All of them had been just stuck with me throughout. Even the ones that I didn't go back to as singles, like Contenigo, Closer, Smoke, Cheers to the End. All those are just incredible. It's unreal Andy Cizik's vocal range through this, Termina. There was another project he does. Can't remember the other one. It was like a V in the name as well. I was thinking I think it was Wonder. Was the other one? It's like started with a V. It had like a V in the initials. Whatever. It doesn't matter. Suffice to say, Andy
is super talented. Yeah.
Yeah, he's super fucking talented, and you can tell the single song you need to listen to know his talent is Soul Stealer, where he can just go from his just moderate highs to chorus filled with harmonies to like a near breakdown with like a very kind of harsh scream added into it, but not too harsh to where it like alienates anyone. It's all just so super easy to listen to. It helps that this album is very transient coded. You can definitely tell like a lot of this was built on the backbone of like transient, hyperreal, fractals, all those songs that just have a very similar sound to it. I need to go back and listen to that album in full. I had transient pop in some of my daily mixes and really enjoyed it too. Makari was probably the standout artist this year for me for like albums to listen to just throughout the entirety of the year. The only reason this isn't much higher is that the songs that I don't listen to as singles most often, I don't really have much else to say on them. And a lot of this album is me listening to it from top to bottom. I can't tell you individual parts about some of these songs on here, like Gold Palace Kingdom, Tidal Wave, Deteriorate. Some of those just kind of mix together, and it's a little bit unfortunate, but it all sticks together and all makes a complete package for me. So number 5 is where it's going to land for me. Any other year it probably would be a little bit lower, but this year had some kind of meta releases from bands that I would normally put on. So
yeah, this was in top 10 contention for me for a while. I really like this album, so I'm glad it showed up on somebody's list.
Oh yeah,
I need to revisit this album because I remember liking some songs off of it, but I struggled to enjoy it as a whole. Like, it just started to fall a little flat the further into the album I got, but I feel like I need to give it a re-listen.
Yeah, definitely agree. Derek?
My number 5 album of the year in true Derek fashion is one that we did not talk about on the podcast. And it is Hit Me Hard and Soft by Billie Eilish.
So much stuff, it's a craving, not a crush. Call me when you're there. I said I'll buy you something rare, and I left it under clear.
So for me, Billie Eilish has had some like obvious classics. I've been listening to her since, I guess 2016 at this point, which like
She
I
really
can
been
say I
like
was
a
there.
pop star that long?
No. So she had like a debut, as far as I remember, like its debut couple singles on SoundCloud at the start that people then remixed, and a remix of her song Ocean Eyes was how I first found her. I think it was like a Mr. Suicide Sheep upload or something like that, if I can drop a throwback.
Sounds about right.
But I think the biggest thing for me about her past albums is they've had some really good, like timeless classics on them, but they've been a little all over the place, especially her last album, Happier Than Ever, which was, I believe, 16 tracks long. And again, some really good songs, but not enough cohesion to make it something that I want to dive back into. I think it ended up like, that was a year where I listened to like 300 albums. I think it made it to like 34 or something like that. Like, it was not very high on my list compared to the rest of my favorite albums of that year. But what really helps this album is that it's all cohesive. There's not a lot of experimentation on here. I heard a lot of people criticizing the album for being too safe. And it being safe is what makes it so appealing and so good, because you've got the other albums if you want something that's, you know, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Here, everything plays within the same realm. And what it ends up doing is creating an album where the sounds, even when they're different, everything meshes together perfectly. You have Skinny, which is the intro, which talks about like her problems with her self-image. And it's like, oh, well, everybody's saying that I look prettier now, and it's probably because I got skinnier. But the old me, what is the lyric? The old me is the real me, and I think she's pretty. Which then goes into Lunch, which is just really gay. There's no other way to put it. Because I think she either got outed or came out as bisexual this year. So she went full force and leaned into it. With one of my most listened to songs of the year. Lunch is a banger. Out of all the songs on here, some are slower, some are a little more fast-paced. Lunch is just fast, fun pop with a really...
I haven't heard this album, so do you think Lunch would, like, that's where I should start?
Lunch, if I were to recommend you one song off of this, it would probably be Lunch.
Noted.
I only know the song because what band was it? Some band
Lost
did
in
a
Hollywood.
cover.
They just
yeah,
covered
Lost in
it,
Hollywood.
Oh God, they covered
doing a
it?
cover of it.
I would be interested to hear that. I think that's one of the songs that rock and metal bands should not. It's one of those where it drops and you're like, "Our Last Night, please God, don't do this to me." But I think the highlight of Lunch for me is the bass line. Like the bass on this album is really chunky and well produced. I mean, very forward front. And I mean, you guys know me, a good bass line in the mix is all it takes. Which goes on to, I probably should have looked up how to pronounce this, but it's Chihiro, Chihiro, could stand for something, not too sure. Which is the biggest grower of the album for me, and is the final of the trio. All the first 3 tracks blend together, and it has one of my favorite moments on here, in the chorus where it asks, "Did you take my love away from me?" Where her voice steadily rises and gets more and more airy as the bass line kicks in. It's beautiful. Which then gets to Birds of a Feather, which if you've heard a song off this album, it's probably this one because it got stupid popular. And it's honestly one of the most well-written modern love songs that I've heard. Very simple, very straightforward, but beautiful. It's almost like when you listen to it, you do feel like you're a bird flying through like a serene garden. Like the imagery that it's trying to evoke, you feel it through the music, which is something that I really appreciated. Which then gets to Wildflower, which is my favorite song on the album, which poses, kind of thoughts or insecurities about past relationships and seeing, in your partner, all you can think about is their past partners. And it's like, how did you feel when you were with her? Do you think of her when you're with me? And it poses it through a story about dating your friend's ex-boyfriend and the guilt that you feel. And the chorus, "But I see her in the back of my mind all the time, like a fever, like I'm burning alive, like a sign, did I cross the line?" Which at the end of the song then kind of flips it and poses it back at her as, "And I wonder, do you see her in the back of your mind in my eyes?" Which then goes into, there's a lot of relationship themes on this album, which comes with, I think, a lot of that maturity that I was talking about. It gets to The Greatest, which is about doing the most for a partner who doesn't reciprocate and doesn't really give a shit, and how, a lot of self-praise for all the things that you did to try and make the relationship work. Which then goes into L'amour de la vie, which is like the love of my life, which is kind of a twin. And it delves into the love that you invested from that song, The Greatest, and says, you know what? You were the love, or I was the love of your life, but you weren't mine. And it talks about how much better they're doing in this new relationship and that I wish you the best, but I'm gone. And then the most intriguing song on the album for me is The Diner, which completely throws out everything, all these somber, serious notes. And she writes a song from the point of view of her stalker that she had to get a restraining order against, which I was so confused how we got here the first time I listened to the album, but it's really well written, really, really intriguing. And then you end off with Bittersweet and Blue at the very end, which have a lot of lyrical callbacks in the same way that Ray, the closer off of 131 by Emarosa, does, where it brings back some of the choruses and song titles. It does that for these 2 songs. Ultimately,
I listened to that album this year. I should remember that, but I don't.
Man, Ray is one of the best
I finally listened
to
an Emarosa album for the first time ever this year.
You don't remember shit.
I don't remember shit. Sorry, my bad.
It's all right.
Right.
You're allowed one bad take, Jake, for this episode, but you've used it up now, so you're on thin ice. I guess at the end of the day, I appreciate that we have 10 refined tracks here as opposed to 14 or 16 like her last albums. And I think that the part that makes it the most listenable to for me is that there are 5 songs on this album that are at least 5 minutes long. And the runtime is 43 minutes. And the album and those songs, none of them feel their runtime. And it's just a testament to how good her storytelling ability is. And you get invested in the stories in this album as you listen to it. And it makes you want to go back again and again. It's perfect for late nights. It's perfect for late night drives. It was one of my go-to albums this year. Was my number 4 album until 2 days ago. So that's that. But yeah, Hit Me Hard and Soft by Billie Eilish, my number 5 album of the year.
Jacob, I don't think any of us have really listened to it that much, so I don't know if we have. I don't think we can comment that much further.
I got one last thing to know, Derek, before we go
Yes.
off. How much of the albums that you gave us as freebies do we have to know for your top 5?
3.
Okay.
Oh man.
Just thought I would ask.
Alrighty. My number 5 album of the year goes to Era, their album Cure. Everybody's nodding their heads, so I assume you guys figured it out.
Add it back to my cake. It's
We
good.
had it in 10 through 6, so
So after the success of their self-titled album, I'm honestly very surprised that they went with this direction. I don't think this album is as good as Drift. Mainly because it doesn't have an opener like Luminescence and closer like The Hypnotist. And as Jake was saying, the floor is where it matters in this ranking here. And I think for me, the opener and closer are definitely the weaker points on this album. But aside that, I really do appreciate the fact that they took a step back from technicality and complexity of previous albums and kind of gave us a more fun, groovy album, if you will. I think the 4-track run of Blue Reverie into Slow Sour Bleed, into Wish and Glimpse, if you want to count those as 4 tracks. I think Wish is opener to Glimpse, but anyway, great 4-track run. My favorite 4-track run on the album. Blue Reverie was my 5th most played song this year.
Damn.
I don't know how that happened, but it did. I guess it just reminded me of Drift, because it really feels like it could be on that album.
I remember you being really high on that song when it came out as a single.
Yes. And then we have Slow Sour Bleed, which you can really hear the similarities to What Do You Want From Me by Bad Omens, because Jesse wrote that song, I believe. So I can or co-wrote
Maybe that
it,
explains why I like that song so much.
Maybe
that explains why it's my favorite Era song. Has Bad Omens influence.
And I think that song is the most fun on the album. And the breakdown or pre-breakdown makes me just want to dance.
Nothing grows in eternity, baby.
Or even like the little dance dance bit before. But my favorite track or tracks on the album, it's kind of cheating, but Wish into Glimpse is my favorite. I think it's perfectly placed on this album, where it's in the middle of the album, right? So it gives us like a little break with Wish. It's a little instrumental intro into, in my opinion, the best song. And it kind of made me think, you know how like albums in the past were made to have like 2 openers basically for a world that was like dominated by vinyl. Dominated isn't the right word, but it kind of made me think like that's what this feels like. This is the second opener to this album. And I just love the riff of Glimpse and the melodic vocals from Jesse. I'm gonna read the ending chorus because I think it still feels like really, what's the word, proggy lyrically. But they have, I don't know, Era just has a way of like making it seems like so melodic, even though it's like totally, I don't understand anything they're saying. the lyrics for the end of the song they repeat a bunch of times, but a floating empty vessel, a resonant voice celestial, the fall is everlasting, a child led, ghost surrounding. And that's repeated a bunch of times throughout the end of the song, and probably for like about minute and a half. Yeah, I think Jesse is definitely the like the core improvement I've seen in this album as opposed to previous ones. You can really tell he's improved as a vocalist with both Ghost Atlas and Era. Crawl Backwards Out of Heaven is really heavy, but also again has the really nice melodic bridge which breaks up the song really nicely. And Pale Iris as a single didn't really stick with me. I think I saw it live when I saw Bad Omens in Era, and they played like they played all songs from the Era album, like the self-titled album, and then this song didn't really stick with me then. But in the context of the album, I think it's a great song. It's not my favorite, but still a great song. Unfortunately, like I said, Wave and Cure aren't very strong songs for me, so I don't think that I think that's why this album is number 5 and not number 1 or 4 or 3 or 2 or but I can definitely say I was very surprised when this album released, and because I didn't expect it at all, and it was and I'm very happy to say that my faith in Era has been totally restored.
Hell yeah. I didn't get to talk about Slow Sour Bleed since it was only a top 10 song, not a top 5 song, but I'm going to take this opportunity to reiterate how incredible that song is because I didn't have another chance.
It's my second favorite on the album after Glimpse.
That second chorus where JT just unleashes his harsh vocals, the fucking primal rage, whatever fucking line. I don't have it written down because that was for another episode, but god damn, it's so good.
Primal rage to sedate lucid memory.
Yes.
Salvation of the undone.
Yeah, god, it's so good. It's so good. Is Snowblood still your favorite Era song, Derek?
No.
Okay,
No.
so it's fallen off.
I would say it's honestly probably Past Life Persona off of this album.
Oh man, that's
Yeah.
like my
Yeah.
Well, I don't think it's my least favorite, but it's on the lower half.
Slow Sour Bleed has absolutely overtaken Snowblood for me at this point. It's not close.
I still like Snowblood more than Slow Sour Bleed. Yeah, I'm gonna
Bleach.
I need some slow sour. Fuck!
There's the stroke, everyone.
Jake, give us your number 4 album, man.
All right. The debut album train does not stop here. My number 4 album of the year goes to Secrets of the Future by Relica.
The power keep coming back until the light is mine. I can make the rise from the back. I can make him hurt back.
Write it
Check
down.
that one.
Really?
Yep.
We got this one. I really thought this was going to be higher.
If there's
Yeah, I thought
any
so too.
album that I am underrating, it is this one. This is the most impressive album I have heard all year, bar none. Instrumentally, the things that they are doing on this album, I have basically never heard anywhere else. The instrumentation on every song on this album is just unbelievable. From the breakdowns in Dying Light to the guitar solos in Killstar and 2 Steps Apart to the slower moments on songs like Soraya and A Spark. Obviously mentioned it in my top songs episode. A Spark is my favorite song on here. Just this album is more so an album that I listen to and I am like, wow, I am impressed, before I come to the realization of, wow, I enjoyed this album a lot. It is just so impressive to me that they are able to write such complex music and make it this catchy, this memorable, this easy to digest. Lyrically, because it is also very complex to kind of match that more like prog sound that they go for, I'm not able to take away lyrical themes for like the album as a whole in the way that I'm able to with some other albums. I think that's probably one of the downfalls, is that this album is almost too complex for me to fully appreciate. You could argue maybe it's too complex for its own good, but then again, like, I'm sure all of the complex lyrics across this album were written with intent, and this is an album I would love to do like a deep dive with them into if we could ever get them on an After Hours episode. Like I've listened to a couple interviews, and like they've done a couple of explainers on Instagram about what certain songs mean, but like really this album, I feel like there is so much to get into with this album that even 7 months later, I still don't fully understand, and I don't know if I ever will fully understand. But it's just such. I'm just gonna keep reiterating how impressive the instrumentation and songwriting and production and mixing. Again, debut album, by the way. I need to reiterate, debut fucking album, unreal. This is even more impressive of a debut album than Inertia. I would say my top 3 songs on here are obviously A Spark as my favorite song on this album, one of my favorite songs all year. After that, I would give it to 2 of the singles in Terminal and Dying Light. Dying Light is an absolutely phenomenal way to open this album. The first lyrics of that song are "Step into the center of the dying light, claim it, make it rich, revitalize it till you're purified." Because it's basically inviting you to step into the album experience from the literal like first or second of the song. And then in Terminal, you get one of my favorite vocal deliveries across the album. In one of the verses, "If I can make some sense of this, the push and pull, defenses at their strongest, even when my heart is full." Lyrically, I haven't delved into the meaning of it, but it's just one of many vocal deliveries on this album that every time I listen to it, I'm just blown away by Monique's voice. And then in the chorus as well, in the final chorus particularly, the delivery of the final line as the instrumentation fades out and you just hear Monique's voice belt out, "I'm nothing without all I can't control," and like extended delivery on control. I'm not gonna even fucking try. I can't. But it's just beautiful. And then yeah, like some of the other moments on this album, the breakdown at the end of The Flower, the "Now watch me in," and then like whispers bloom as the instrumentation just like chugs. "Keep Yourself Awake" is probably the most funky song on the album. Just the guitars, drums, it really feels like a song designed to highlight the instrumentation more than the vocals. And I think, not to say that the vocals are bad by any means, but the instrumentation really stands out. I'd say it's the most unique song on this album. Physical is another super impressive song for me, probably my 4th favorite. The delivery of "I was told to get out of my head, release my reservations, stop making it make sense. How do I get there if I don't want to make it real? I want to feel the hate get physical, but I don't trust the way it feels." The delivery on that line, mixed with the really fast guitars and drumming behind that instrumentation, it matches the melody so well. And Physical is probably the biggest grower on this album since it came out in May. Like when it came out in May, I'd say I was really into Dying Light and A Spark, obviously, but I was really spending a lot of time with Keep Yourself Awake, The Flower, and Cave. Physical, not so much. Physical, it was definitely one that I think really only hit me a couple months after the album came out, that I would go back to the album and listen to Physical, and I'm like, wait, this song kind of bangs. It kind of heat. And yeah, it's one of my favorite on the album now. To explain why this is not any higher, again, it comes down to the floor. I feel like Upside Down is a good closer. I think A Spark would have been an unbelievable closer. It's obviously my favorite song on the album. Not to say that Upside Down even does a bad job at closing the album. I just don't resonate with the song as much. It's still a good song. I just don't resonate with it as much. So it leaves the lasting impact of the album not as high as it could have been. I do enjoy the final line of Upside Down. "To suffer in silence" feels nice at the bottom for the instrumentation slowly fades out. I think that's a nice way to leave the album, but it's not the strongest closer compared to the closers for the 3 albums that I have ahead of it. And then there's a couple other songs on here that I just don't stand up. I think Crossfire is pretty mediocre. And then 2 Steps Apart, other than that really slow, ambient, thoughtful guitar solo, again, isn't super memorable to me. It really does come down to the floor of these albums or what's determining where it's ranking. And it's really, those 3 songs are kind of the only faults that I have with it. Every other song on here has something that I enjoy going back to it. Secrets of the Future, 50-minute long album, the longest album that I have in my top 10. And it earns its runtime. It does not feel like a 50-minute long album. It feels long. It doesn't feel like a 30-minute album for sure. But there are some albums you listen to that are pushing 45, 50 minutes and they start to drag on. This album did not drag on. There's enough variety, and again, the instrumentation is so impressive that every song has something unique to offer and never really get too repetitive for me to enjoy it. If there's any album I'm underrating on my top 5, let alone top 10, it is this one. This, honestly, like, my album of the year was a 2-horse race. Honestly, I think there's an argument to be made this could have been my album of the year. Any of my top 4 could have been album of the year.
I really thought this was going to be your album of the year. But you and I have one brain cell on this because Crossfire and Upside Down are like the only reason. It was close. Phenomenal.
Yeah, hey, I'll take it that it was close because I know you weren't super fond of that EP a couple years ago. So.
No, this is night and day.
The fact that this is close to your top 10 is an absolute win in my book. Yeah, Secrets of the Future. I think this band has an incredibly bright future, and I cannot wait for the next album after this. Come to America, please.
Someday.
Surely.
All right. My number 4 is For Keeps by Too Close to Touch.
We got it.
We got it.
Nice.
We missed Makari, but we got this.
This was actually going to be my number 2 for the longest time.
Really?
But yeah, it really was. I really, really enjoyed this album. What I love from this album is just Keaton's emotion. It is unlike any other band's. Like, just how much his voice carries all of these songs is unreal. My favorites from the album being Novocaine, Control. I really liked Disappear when I went back and listened to it a couple times to kind of refamiliarize myself with the album. Her Reynolds surprised me. I didn't think I would like that going back into this, but I had a period of time within the last maybe like month or so where I would just put on Hurt Reynolds just to listen to, just doing mundane tasks. And it was a really kind of catchy song. Love that like rapid, fast pace before the chorus, like that rapid bridge before each of the choruses. I really, really enjoyed that. That was probably like my favorite part of that song. Hopeless just is, you know, very much Too Close to Touch pilled with Telly from World Alive, producing a really, really good feature. The other songs that I hadn't mentioned, Designer Decay was with me throughout most of the year. I fell off of it kind of a bit toward the latter half of this year when I went back into the album, saw how much better the rest of the songs were. I really didn't give it that much more of a listen. It's still in like my most played songs of the year just because that's where it ended up. But then Heavy Hearts, that's probably the only song I would say that I didn't go back to a lot. I even went back to They Don't Even Know just pretty frequently. Probably one of my favorite closes of the year. That to say, you know, kind of going over the lyrics and everything like that, I don't have as much to say on this album, unfortunately. Whereas the other 3 albums that are right above it, I connect with a bit more. Too Close to Touch as a band, I don't really have a direct history with, and I feel like for me that kind of opportunity for this to kind of be better than all the other albums that I did have connection with this year, it kind of falls flat a little bit. And it's not because of the band or anything, it's just because of my personal preference. That to say, this is an incredible album. What a good send off, and Keaton, he did great work, and I'm glad to see that this was put out when we had mentioned it in the recap when we did this album individually. We really didn't deserve it.
We are very lucky to have gotten this at all.
Absolutely.
Yep.
That's all I got on that.
Good pick. My number 4 album of the year is The Crucible of Life by the Home Team.
Did we have this? I think we did.
Did we have this?
I hope so.
Did we
I mean,
remove
it
it?
yes.
We removed
Did
it
we
at some
whiff?
point, you fuckers.
Oh, we whiffed.
We
Let's
removed
go.
Well, let's see if you guys whiff on mine. This is on my list.
Oh, did we? Now I want to check before I
I
even
think
say it.
I think we put that.
We
No,
did.
We
We did.
Yeah,
We did. All right, hold on. Before I do
Nice.
my thing, I'm adding a checkbox to Justin because that is more important right now. Look, it's no secret that I loved Issues. Them being gone is a tragedy for the scene. They were so far ahead of their time. But with the way that the scene is progressing and certain trends have made their way into the scene, it was only a matter of time before somebody kind of picked up that torch. And like we talked about in one of the other superlative episodes, there have been a couple bands that have done that. The Home Team, Nightlife, for example. But I think that out of all those bands, with this album, the Home Team have cemented themselves as like the front runner among all those other bands. I remember the biggest issue that I had with this album at its onset was that it didn't feel like an album per se. Like I felt like Turn You Off as an opener and Loud as a closer were like iffy. And I think Justin, it might have been you that said that doesn't matter. Like I think, and I'm like, and I argued with you about it in the episode, but
Yeah.
it really didn't matter. The more that I listened to it, the more I realized that it didn't need to be an album that met my traditional expectations for one that would land in my top 5. Just front to back, there is so much swagger and energy and sex appeal. It's like unlike anything else that came out this year, at least in the scene. And what I really appreciated almost more than anything else is that a lot of the songs on here, there are a lot of relationship focused songs, but a lot of them feel like almost a double entendre for relationships like you would expect with romantic or sexual relationships, and relationships between the band and their fans and other bands in the scene. I think especially a song like Turn You Off, right, it could be about the fans. It could be about like, oh, I didn't mean to turn you off with what we were making or the direction that we took the band, but I'm just going to keep doing my own thing. And if it's not enough for you, then so be it. In the same way that it could just be like, oh, I didn't mean to give you the ick in a relationship. Like, and then obviously I think Brag as well is something talking about like their comparison to the other people and other bands in this corner of the space or in the scene. Like, hey, what we're doing, like, I could theoretically give you advice to help you get to where we are, but we're just going to take this next leap and be far away from everybody else. Which like, that's aura. Like to say that, oh, like we're the best band or the best like group of individuals in the scene, and you could come to us for advice if you wanted to, but I wouldn't be able to explain it because we're just like inherently better than you. Like not in like a negative way, but it's like, damn, you guys you're cocky, and they really
in a very self-confident way.
Yeah, exactly. There's just so much energy. I love the Intervals feature on Love and Company. Intervals being an instrumental band, they added so much groove to the song. Roommates, obviously.
Canadian band too.
Let's go. Canada's got a few good things besides you. Is that the takeaway? Maybe Tim Hortons?
No.
Did Tim Hortons fall off? That's like a place I always wanted to try. Oh, hell no.
No.
Damn, okay.
One
Noted.
step forward, 2 steps back,
Two
Derek.
steps back. God dang it.
We
Wait,
have
2 steps
dogs.
apart. 2 steps apart, like the Relica song.
Wait, it's all connected.
It's all connected to the dog.
I think Roommates, it took a coin flip, but it ended up in my top 5 songs of the year. Like, it was really, it just, there's the quality of music on. Good lord, you okay, bro?
I did a coin flip.
I looked away for a second and I was like, did this dude like drop a spoon or
Right?
something?
What the a spoon is crazy. It sounds exactly like a spoon. Yo, that's the heaviest coin of all time. What the fuck is
Toronto Zoo.
Yeah,
Sorry.
no, it starts off with so much energy, and then over time and Honest kind of slow it down a little bit, but not really. The more that I listened to Honest, the more the riff in it reminded me of the Bill Murray album from this year, which is good. I mean, I really like that Bill Murray album. So, but then we get to Somebody Else's Face, which takes like all of the kind of insinuated sex appeal and just says, no, I don't think I can fuck you. Like, straight up, I'm not touching that. No way. The broadside feature in that is incredible. I love that it brings back some of that heavier, bassy, crunchier instrumentation from the end of Turn You Off. Walk This World With Me gets way more wholesome than anything else on the album, but I really appreciate it, especially after all of the energy that came in the first 7 tracks. It was really nice to just slow down for a second. Same with the interlude, All Squeezed Out, which I appreciated the fact that he actually sang on the interlude. I feel like a lot of times you might get an instrumental interlude connecting the tracks or something like that, and this was really well done, especially with that vocal clip. And then the energy picks right back up with Hell. I did not like Hell at all as a single. I like straight up did not like it, and it has grown.
I remember you saying something about it.
Yeah, not a fan. But then we get to arguably my favorite song on the album. It goes back and forth with Roommates, and it's Love When You're Used. And the thing that I really appreciate about that is the chorus, because it's like a conversation with a person that you're in a toxic relationship with. He goes, "You still do everything that I do." And the other person goes, "Believe me." He says, "Don't stop if you don't want to." The other person, "Don't leave me. You swear that it's the night that never seems to feed it. Don't you want to leave it?" The other person goes, "Leave it. And I can tell that you still like that. You're twisted. Why don't you want to fight back? I'm livid. Yeah, okay, but now you only tell me that you need it when you really mean it, but I don't believe you." And the delivery on the back and forth and the energy and the way the drums pick up in the second half of the chorus, man, it's so fucking good. I love it so much. And then you get to Loud, and you're like, oh, the album's ending. Like, the energy goes so fast through this album that you don't feel like you've hit track 12 by the time you've gotten there. I mean, it's a 12-track album that's 34 minutes. Like, it's relatively quick, but, you know, Loud has just enough closer energy that I could pick up on after everything that I'm like, all right, I accept it. I tried so hard to, like, not justify this album to myself in a way, because it didn't feel... Like, there are other albums in my top 10 that I think are objectively better albums than this, like better pieces of art put together. But no matter what my mood was, I was throwing this album on. I could be driving to work, I could be happy, I could be sad. If I was sad, by the time that chorus of Roommates hit, it was over for me. Like, I'm happy again. Like, everything's all good. This was my everything album, along with one other album that isn't in my top 5, but is in my top 10. That anytime I had free time, if I didn't know what to put on, this was going on. And ultimately, I think the quality and replayability of all of the songs on here, I couldn't deny it. I couldn't justify it any higher than number 4, but I couldn't deny it being any lower. I swapped it with Billy last minute when I was listening to it, because I realized that yesterday, as I was like putting a bunch of stuff together for work and putting stuff together for today, that the album that I wanted to listen to in the background while I did it was this. And I'm like, okay, like, I got to move it up.
That's a good sign, yeah.
But yeah, my number 4 album of the year, Crucible of Life by the Home Team.
This did not make my top 10 in any capacity ever this year, but this was, I think, the biggest grower on me throughout any album I heard this year. The first time I listened to it in July, I was like, this album's fine. At this point, it's like, I think it's in my top 15 at this point. Like it probably went from like a middling like top 40, like barely top half of albums I've heard this year to almost like top 15, top 10 content.
Hell yeah.
This could have made my top 5 if I gave him more time. I wish I did throughout the year, but everything else that I had in my like top 5 just won out.
I think what helped it for me too is that I didn't love a lot of albums as a whole this year. So if I wanted something to put on, like my options were a little more limited.
Yeah.
So shout out the home team.
Reasonable.
Jacob.
I have a feeling this one's gonna be on some lists. My number 4 album is "Things Are Different Now" by Rain City Drive.
Did we get that?
Yes.
We did. Okay.
Nobody's saying anything.
Any
This is
mentioners?
interesting.
Oh, I'm looking at
Oh.
those top 2 right now.
Yeah, these guys up here. There's something
all
suspicious
right.
going on.
Nothing on mine. I don't know my list. Like I'm not looking at it. I don't remember if I have it.
Man, I can't believe I didn't get any responses. Okay. Honestly, so after that, I don't really have too much to say about this album, but it has a lot of like catchy songs like "Concrete Closure," "Over Me," "Disarm the Hourglass." We got emotional songs like Never Bloom and "Elusive Dream." Then we have like bangers like Medicate Me, and then it has like a closer that does all of that. I think I really appreciate how this band has experimented with their sound in this album. We got a lot of different sounds. Mainly in like, I guess in a heavier sense. We're experimenting with some heaviness. But some lyrics I wanted to share, and maybe you guys didn't catch this, but in "Lose My Composure," we have in verse 2, he says, "You're now chasing down a star on the boulevard," which is a reference to Prayers.
Oh yeah.
I remember that.
Chorus.
Yeah, I did not catch that. That's a good
not.
catch.
Yeah, I had to listen to Prayers last month and caught on to that.
In Prayers, he says, "Probably tripping over stars or you stumbling down the boulevard." And I think, honestly, I don't really get the name of this album, but that kind of sets it up for me. Like I kind of draw a conclusion there, not 100%. It's kind of a weak link, but what I think the album is trying to get at is this part of him or relationship, as well as I think Never Bloom is about his father, his late father. His life has changed basically in all these ways, and that's how things are different now. It's kind of a weak link, I know, but yeah. And then I want to talk about "Sacrifice" because it's just epic, and I feel like I didn't give this song do it a justice in our recap, because this song was in contention for my top 10 songs of the year. I think this is Rain City Drive's best song ever.
Dang.
That's
High praise.
I could see that.
So they have better lyrics, I could say that, but sonically I think this is their best song ever, and it's a statement to put this as the closer. Just because it's so different from anything they've ever done, but it works so so well. I love how this song builds and the instrumentals get so freaking heavy at the end. You almost think he's gonna scream, which I would love to see, honestly. But yeah, I think this song is epic. I love the emotion we get on songs like Never Bloom and this song. But yeah, there's not really much else to say. I think I don't think this is his best album. I still think the first one is their best, but this is definitely a step up from the previous one.
Yeah, I wish I liked some of the songs individually on the album more than within its own package, but I agree. I think Rain City Drive really did well on this.
I am so mad I fumbled the bag on not getting tickets to see them in Worcester.
I really enjoyed going to them on their
That
headliner.
set list was so good.
It was incredible. I think they played like basically all of the heaters from this
Yeah.
album.
And past albums too.
Yeah.
Like it. I have the last time I saw this band was when Heavier was the only single they had out with Matt McAndrew's vocal.
Jeez.
Wild.
I think I saw them twice in 2020.
I still haven't heard Talk to a Friend live.
That's criminal.
I know. One day.
Man.
Every time they're in New England, something comes up and I can't see them.
They had really
that's
bad
right.
sound issues when I saw them with Dance Gavin Dance, so I would love to see them again without really shitty speakers.
They played Sacrifice live, which was really good.
Oh my god, man. They didn't even come to Canada. That's why, man.
You don't deserve it. That's why you got to come to America.
I know.
Soon.
I'm working on we're becoming the 51st state, you know.
Oh yeah.
True.
You guys realize once if that ever happened, you'd still have Quebec trying to leave.
We still have California trying to leave.
And
They
Texas.
can make their own.
All right. That brings us to our top 3 albums. This is the no leaks zone. That's what I'm calling it.
Man, we got here so fast.
We're on pace for under 3 hours.
God bless America, dude.
Oh man.
Now, the question is, are we going to spend an entire hour on our albums of the year or not? Because that's
No.
the determining factor.
That's up to you guys. I don't think I will.
That's up to you. That's up to Derek and Jake, I think.
All right.
It's up to Jake.
My number 3 album of the year. We have not left Australia yet. Foxblood with their album Whalefall.
Check that.
I can't believe this is this high.
It's surprising to me, but also like after the other superlatives, it makes sense.
Yeah, Charlatan Blues, obviously my most played song of the year, one of my favorite songs of the year. What I didn't mention in the top songs episode is that of the 5 songs that they released this year, 2 of them were in my top, 3 of them were in my top 20. So
Dang.
Black Hole Cities and Time Flies in July both made my top 20 songs of the year. And that only leaves Gallows Song and Go to Pieces, because half of this album was released 4 fucking years ago at this point. You had Nepotism, Ghosts and Bones, Friends, all released as singles way back. And I loved Nepotism and Ghosts and Bones especially when they dropped as singles back in 2020. And I believe they got new mixes on this album and they sound phenomenal. But the thing, I have a hard time explaining why I love this album so much, because it's not technically any more impressive than Relica. It has like a very similar ceiling to Relica. It's just when I listen to this album, I get that same feeling of just utter amazement of just, this album isn't technically impressive instrumentally in the same way that Relic album is. It's not nearly as progressive on the instrumentation, but Foxblood executed the fundamentals of metalcore on this album in a way that was unmatched this year. This is my favorite metalcore album of the year. And just the way that it flows from front to back, the energy from song to song, you can feel the almost desperation in the vocals, both like the sing screamy parts to especially like even the harsher parts, like the vocal delivery, no matter what style he's singing in on this song, you really, really feel it. Whether it's in Time Flies in July, the opening track, maybe I'm the villain after all, just that delivery of maybe I'm the villain after all, like it's like gut-wrenching almost, in not in a sad way, but in like an angry way. Charlatan Blues, the delivery on wouldn't want to put ideas in my head, wouldn't want to set the precedent, just whiskey, nicotine, opiates, that's good living, but you're better off dead. And then repeat it again, that's good living, but you're better off fucking dead. You feel that anger and that emotion and that outburst of energy, and that stays consistent throughout the entire album. I think I'm gonna go back to the floor analogy. What's the floor of this album? It's Friends. It's track 8. Every other song on here is phenomenal. Whereas with Relica and Inertia, I could pick 2, maybe 3 songs that felt a little weaker. Friends is the only song on this album that I feel like is a significant step below everything else on here. And that's still to say it's an enjoyable song. It doesn't ruin the album by any means. It's just the rest of the album offers so much that I love that I get to Friends. And I mean, when you're comparing songs, something has to be at the bottom, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, the math doesn't work that, like, if I'm trying to rank my top 3 songs on the album, 3 of them can't be number 1, you know? It's like, if there's 9 songs in an album, 2 of them can't be number 8. There has to be a number 9 somewhere. Unfortunately, that's Friends, and it's still a good song. It's just not as good. I don't get as much enjoyment out of it, but I'm gonna keep going song by song. You get into Gallows Song, just that delivery of swinging to the gallows song, just repeated over and over again. Every time it repeats, and the instrumentation gets even chuggier behind it. It's so well done. Nepotism, it's not who you know, but what you know. That chorus is phenomenal. Black Hole City is probably the biggest grower on this album. When the album came out, I was spending Time Flies in July the most. But as time went on, I absolutely fell in love with Black Hole Cities as a song. The guitars in the pre-choruses, the into the depths of the rabbit hole, we dive and we dive. The delivery on that second dive just belted out with so much energy and conviction and desperation again. And the transitions from the pre-choruses into the chorus, it's so smooth and seamless. To the breakdown of the song, where you get like a slow build of like the sing screamy, like almost talking into the microphone, rake me over the coals. I'd be better off as a ghost. And then eventually you get the breakdown drops out. You get like I can't do it. I don't. Sorry. But then at the end of this song, you just belt out Black Hole Cities, blah, and it's just such a phenomenal song. And then, as I've already mentioned about Ghosts and Bones, you get into that song. It's super, super fun and bouncy. We're all just ghosts and bones. The delivery is phenomenal. And then you get to the end of the album, Go to Pieces. Said the grass is always greener on the other side, but they fucking lied. Now you reap what you sow. Actually, that's I think that's Ghosts and Bones. I didn't label it. I know it's my bad. Whoopsies. Go to Pieces. Maybe I'm no better. Maybe the cycle just repeats, and I doom you to a life of melancholy mediocrity. And the final words of the album are, and with that said, I'll make my peace. It is a powerful line to leave this album on. It's a fantastic closer, but it doesn't give you the happy ending, because this album, I don't think there's so much darkness going on lyrically across this album that, like, you've gone through so much fucked up shit that, yeah, maybe you can come out a little better on the other side, but you've still gone through so much that you're not, that baggage is going to live with you for life. Like, even if you do move past it and you can grow, you still lived those experiences. And as much as you can make your peace with it, it's still always going to be a part of you to some extent, even if it's just in your memories. And just reconciling with that and making peace with it, even if, you know, you might be doomed to repeat the cycle, it's just phenomenal. There's so much that I love about this album. When Foxwood made a run for top 10 albums in 2019 with Grief and Mercy Sleep, the opening 5-song run of that album is still one of my favorite opening runs to any album I have ever heard, period. Like, up there contending with, like, the Death of Peace of Mind levels of blown away by the opening to that album. It's the back half of Grief and Mercy Sleep that really falls off. But I feel like Foxwood were able to take pieces of that Grief and Mercy Sleep run that impressed me so much in 2019 and figure out how to make it more consistently appealing across an entire album. This is only a 9-track album, and it's 36-minute songs. Most songs are around 4 minutes long, but yeah, they just absolutely knocked it out of the park with this one. Every time I listen to it, I am just blown away consistently. Every time I'd go back to it throughout the year and, like, am I overrating this album because half of these songs came out 4 years ago? And every time I listen to this album, I'm like, no, this album is just that fucking good. And yeah, that's kind of all I have to say.
Banger album. So nobody does
I
it.
should note. I should note that we are 3 out of 5 albums through my top 5, and all 3 have been Australian bands.
Australia cooks.
Australia cooks.
They gotta make up for Diamond Construct somehow.
Justin, on to you.
My number 3 Bronze Award album of the year goes to Frenia with their album Your Heaven Is My Hell.
We got this one, right?
No, we didn't get this one.
How did we fuck this one up?
How
did we mess this one up?
How?
Yo,
We're fucking stupid.
This one is probably the Give Me.
Shit. Yo, now that I look at our list, how are some of these in there over Frenia?
Let me see.
Yo, we
I have to see our list when we're done.
Yeah, what is this one? What is number 8? What is that? Yeah, 8.
My bad. That one's me.
I don't think that one's there.
Man.
Anyway, Justin, go ahead.
Don't ask for forgiveness. Don't ask for apology. Ask for forgiveness, or whatever the phrase is.
Frenia, this is Frenia's best work, in my opinion. Like, going over the last album, Separated, into this, I think there is no contest. This instrumentally, lyrically is better. Mind you, it could, lyrically, they've got that language barrier that they have to deal with. Like, none of them fluently speak English, so a lot of the lyrics kind of somewhat basic in, like, the metalcore scene, but they still paint a cohesive picture all throughout, and it's really, really good. I think that some of my favorites from this being Embers, Lucid, Strangers, a lot of the songs that just kind of have the slow kind of take going into it, have a general build that kind of goes all throughout the song, and it's really good. I really like this album. A couple of lyrics I picked out were Embers, the chorus, as my scars heal, I come alive, I tear up the patches. Then that first two lines repeat, and then finalizes with now it's my time to rise from the ashes. The repetition, along with the guitar work and the instrumentation throughout that chorus, just works really well. I really like the delivery in My Hell, where the "Oh God, it never ends" just throughout going into like the instrumental breakdown into it works super well, super clean, catches on. We didn't talk about it much because there wasn't much to say on it, but the one Hungarian song on here, Alone, translated to however you say that, is instrumentally phenomenal. I really love the strings and the instrumentation going into it. Obviously I don't understand the lyrics, but you can just hear like the emotion and power kind of in his voice, and it just works super well. I would kind of treat it as like a interlude almost, just because we don't understand, not being native to that language, we don't understand the message, but it sounds very good. Then there's the sax and over and over, where 2024 I think is the year of the sax, because a lot of bands have put in some good sax work into their songs, and this song is no different. My favorite being Lucid, where I think that song just all throughout is super fun, super great to listen to. One of my favorite choruses of the year: a wall in front of me, a never-ending haunting dream, a bitter remedy, can't swallow it, a car crash I have to watch. This year felt like a car crash I have to watch. Tearing open wounds, still have so much to lose. Alone you will fall apart. It's great. Frenia, one of, if not the most underrated international bands that can do this kind of sound that not a lot of people are talking about.
Yeah, they definitely need a wider platform for
Yeah.
sure. I don't know, man. I
think we half-assed Justin's list.
Kinda a little bit.
It's hard to get yours, Justin. Like every year,
it was hard to make my list this year, and I was the one making the damn thing.
Now I feel better.
I think if I had to make an excuse for why we whiffed on this one, it's because it's probably the most recent release on your top 10, and that it came out so recently that like we somehow just skipped over it because we were looking over albums that came out earlier this year and just like missed it.
There was a world that this made it that this didn't make it on my list, but with all the songs I really enjoyed and kept going back to over the last couple of weeks, it had to be there.
My number 3 album of the year is Brat by Charlie XCX.
I'm just living that life, untouched, cold classic, but it's still hot. I get money, you get nothing, kiss the backside. Yeah, I know you.
No way, we got this one, guys.
Check it off.
I also just realized I put the clip for the Billy song in Justin's top 10 group chat.
Yeah.
Tell me.
I was wondering where that was. I thought you just didn't think of it.
Oh, the link. That would help.
Yeah, I put it in there if anybody hasn't listened to Charlie. The music video is great.
Who hasn't listened to Charlie? Brat Summer or whatever. something coconut tree.
I've seen more about the meme of her album cover than the songs itself. All right, I got what I needed out of that.
All right, I get the idea.
I tried to timestamp it where she spits on you on the video. I hope
Oh,
everybody
I thought she
appreciated that.
headbutt me.
Oh no, she spits on you and then headbutts you. That's like the wrong timestamp. There's a lot of headbutting going on in that video. So it was Brat Summer this year. Everybody was talking about this, even if you don't
Not
listen
us.
to it. Yeah, not true. But even if you don't talk about it, you still hear about it. Charlie is always somebody who, from my understanding, she had that feature on, I'm gonna butcher this, so I can't, let me see if I can find it. That I Don't Care song. I crashed my car into
Oh.
a bridge. You guys remember that back from like 2013?
Yeah.
She was
so.
on that. It got huge, and I didn't know she was on it at the time. And I was like, oh, that's where I know her from. But I've listened to a couple of her other albums, and there were some okay songs on there, some songs that I liked, but nothing, at least out of memory, that achieved a ton of commercial success. Like there was always, that upper echelon of pop stars, the Billies, the Taylor Swifts, the Ariana Grandes, and then there's that kind of secondary level, which is kind of where I put Charlie. Up until this album, I, to this day, do not understand, outside of how good it is, why this album took off. Like, I don't remember seeing any commercial, like, really big mainstream success for the lead singles to this. It just got popular on TikTok, I think. And, as much as that's helped so many artists in our scene, you don't see it very often in the mainstream pop world, at least not quite as much. I mean, maybe with like Olivia Rodrigo, Chappell Roan, but for an established artist like Charlie, I wouldn't have expected it at all. But it really was the moment. Like, this is, for me, above any other album I've ever heard, the most defined, windows down, drive, speed, very recklessly album. Because if you're in your Brat Summer, you're a boss bitch. You don't care. You can do whatever. You can commit traffic violations. Fuck it. I'm listening to Von Dutch. Anything is possible. But on top of being a really fun album to listen to, there's a lot more to dive into in this album than I would have expected from something that got this big and this mainstream. This album has a lot of different concepts and topics, but ultimately it's a lot about cycles. So being stuck in behaviors, having like generational trauma and the cycles, like trying to break that or come to terms with it. Cycles of being in and out of relationships, of falling back into bad mental places, life cycles, and wanting to get back to times when things were simpler and easier, like childhood or before fame. There's a lot of one-liners on here too. In the opener in 360, I'm everywhere, I'm so Julia. What does that mean? Who knows? But everybody's so Julia. Like, when you listen to this, but you can be so Julia too. It's a really, really good opener that took me a while to appreciate, but once I did, it became one of my favorite songs off the album. You have a song about club classics, which is just her saying, when I go to the club, I want to hear my own music. Here's a song that would go really well in the club. And lo and behold, it is now being played in clubs. We get to a song like Sympathy is a Knife, which has... There's a lot of back and forth in this album in terms of, I'm going to be really deep one second, and then the next, like, we're going to turn into something fun because we're in our Brat Summer. One of the verses on Sympathy is a Knife is, tell me why I want to buy a gun, why I want to shoot myself, volatile, at war with my dialogue. I'd say that there was a God if he could stop this wild voice tearing me apart. And then the next two lines are about, like, hoping that her ex and his new girlfriend break up. Like, it's all over the place. You get to something like, I might say something stupid, which slows it down, but is a really earnest look into where her mind is at. Talk, which the chorus is literally, I wish you talk, repeated 4 times. Wish you talk, wish you talk, wish you just talk to me. And for her to take something so simple and make it into one of the catchiest songs I heard all year is really a testament to her songwriting. And also, above everything else, the biggest positive of this album is the production. Her producer, A.G. Cook, she shouts him out, name drops him in a bunch of different songs. He ate. This album is so well produced, and I think the pinnacle of that is Von Dutch. It is so just, you want to speed. You listen to that in full in the car, and it's one of those where, like, you involuntarily put your foot heavier on the gas pedal. Like, it's so fun to listen to.
Better than Eric Ron.
Oh no. No,
no.
AG, I will give you your flowers. Nobody is better than Eric Ron. There is not a producer on earth that can top
Eric Ron enthusiast comes out of
The
the
Eric
shadows
Ron
today.
enthusiast. Stay strong. I will always vouch for Eric Ron.
Chris Crummett crumming for you though.
Chris Crummett, actually, yeah. He's crumbing for me is crazy work.
That was a misspeak, but I'm glad.
Just listening to the PGD album, like, oh god, I'm gonna crumb. God help me. Yeah, and then you get into things like Everything Is Romantic and Rewind. Rewind especially, I wanted to pull up some lyrics from that. Where is that? I'd go back in time to when I wasn't insecure, to when I didn't overanalyze my face shapes. Nowadays, I only eat at the good restaurants, but honestly, I'm always thinking about my weight. Used to burn CDs full of songs I didn't know. Used to sit in my bedroom putting polish on my toes. Recently, I've been thinking about a way simpler time. Sometimes I think it would be cool to just rewind. That, you know, wishing for your childhood almost to come back when things were simpler. When, I mean, obviously, like, our worries are not the same as Charlie XCX's worries per se in the day to day about commercial success or Billboard or anything like that. But I feel like wanting to go back to your childhood when things were simpler and you were just listening to music and playing games. You didn't have to worry about bills or, you know, life and shit, mental health. Like, it's something that really spoke to me. It's something that I related to a lot this year. But I think that the most relatable song and arguably the best off the album is Apple. Which got a lot of success on TikTok, like I mentioned. But it's about breaking generational traumas and recognizing behaviors in your parents that you see, like they're the apple in this situation, in this metaphor. Verse 1 is, I guess the apple don't fall far from the tree because I've been looking at you so long. Now I only see me. I want to throw the apple into the sky. Feels like you never understand me, so I just want to drive. Verse 2, I guess the apple could turn yellow or green. I know there's lots of different nuances to you and to me. I want to grow the apple, keep all the seeds, but I can't help but get so angry. You don't listen, I leave. And then my personal favorite, I think the apple's rotten right to the core from all the things passed down from all the apples before. I split the apple down symmetrical lines, and what I find is kind of scary, makes me just want to drive. That you are, in a lot of ways, your upbringing. And if your parents didn't take the time, or whoever raised you didn't take the time to heal their own traumas and behaviors, they end up passing that down to you. And as you get older, you might notice the good that you had from your parents, and you also notice the bad. And so many times those things intrinsically become part of who you are. And when you look at that and analyze that and look at those feelings, it can be scary. It can be hard. It can be, you can realize things about your parents that you never knew. And I had that a lot this year. So having Apple is something to relate to and also just listen to because it's fun. Not very good at the Apple dance. If you guys have seen it.
Nope.
But no, and then there's a good stretch here, songs back to back, Mean Girls, and I think about it all the time, that really are fun to listen to, but also, especially, and I think about it all the time, get some insight into where her life is at. 365, the closer, is literally just about going to the club and bumping lines of coke. Like, it is meant to be a fun song, but it is also 365 being like, you know, again with the cycle, yearly 365 days, a remix of the intro 360 that ends in this like really sick instrumental EDM break. It's incredible and one of my favorite moments on the album. I don't know if you guys know what Dress to Impress is. I played a lot of Dress to Impress this year on Roblox, and I always felt like a bad bitch playing it and listening to this album. It can make some white dude from suburban Virginia feel like a bad bitch. that's the Brat Summer effect. That's got me feeling so Julia. And I had this at number 2 until I made my notes for this episode. And in making my notes, I realized I cannot deny my number 2 album that position. So I'm sorry, Charlie. But yeah, I love this album to pieces. This is one of those that I think has a lot of staying power for me that I'll be listening to just because the vibe is so specific and so well done. This is summer anthem for years and years to come.
I want to listen to that Apple. I haven't heard it, but you have me very intrigued.
It's really well done. It's only like what, 2.5 minutes, quick and easy. Jacob,
Alrighty.
let me pull your list up, buddy. Let me see.
I hate going after Dare.
Yeah. My
How do you
bad.
think I feel? I have to go after Jake.
No, this is worse because it's like totally different genres.
Well, that's
I'm like gonna
my fault.
totally it's like the complete opposite.
We knew what we
Alright.
were getting into.
That's true. I did know. So my number 3 album of the year is "You Won't Go Before You're Supposed To" by Knock Loose.
Check that.
Everybody, yeah, man. Am I the only one who's? Oh man, gotten all 3. I'm so predictable.
You're so Julia.
What are you looking at, Jake?
I got a notification. Ignore me.
I think it might have been me.
He's
We're go continue.
okay. So, first of all, let me say this album could have been my number 1. I think it has the potential to be my number 1. But I actually think the vinyl is one of the worst vinyls I own.
Really, like the sound of it?
Yeah.
Oh, hell no.
It sounds, it almost sounds like you're listening to the album through like a tin can.
Oh,
And that kind of ruined it for me a little bit.
Damn.
So I actually don't listen to the vinyl very often, but the second thing that really bothered me on the vinyl is a decision they made with the track listing and how they separated it. They put Moss Covers All on one side and they put Take Me Home on the other, which
dumb.
is like
So
the
stupid.
greatest atrocity ever committed. But in all honesty, like this album's short and it still doesn't feel like it's runtime. Like it feels really even shorter than it is. It feels like almost like 15 minutes, like half the time it actually is. I feel like every time I listen to it, once I get to Slaughterhouse 2, which I think is track 7, I'm like, how did I get here so fast? Like every time. But yeah, so this album starts with like really ominously, like you hear like a bell and all of a sudden it's just chaos. I think Thirst is a great opener. It's short, it's to the point, and it tells you what this album's going to be like. There's not a lot of variation in this album in terms of songs, but there also is at the same time. I think Knock Loose does a really good job of doing this. I love how this album almost sounds like one whole song. You can tell that it was very clearly thought out and planned when making this album. Throughout the whole album, there's almost like this, I don't know how to describe it. It almost sounds like the playgrounds, they have those like merry-go-rounds on them. Like an old one of those that's like squeaking. There's like this, I don't know how to. It's like
I
a
know what you mean.
squeaky
picture it,
sound. Throughout the whole album, and it kind of brings it together. Like a lot of the silent spaces, like I think in Sit and Mourn, there's a bit of that. I think before Blinding Faith, there you can hear the sound as well, and end of Piece by Piece, beginning of Suffocate, you can also hear it quite often as well. I don't know what it means, but it's it's a really cool way of bringing the whole album together as one thing. I love the contrast between vocalists. There's 3 of them. The main one is the contrast of Brian's vocals, which are very high, and Isaac's, which are very low. I think Isaac's moments hit a lot harder because they're so different from Brian's. And like my example is Piece by Piece. I think it's in Piece by Piece. Or no, it's not Piece by Piece. It's in Take Me Home, where there's like the instrumental like breakdown. It keeps going and going, and then he says forget, and then it goes into like this old folksy sounding song. And actually it isn't in Piece by Piece. I'm losing my train of thought, but it is in Piece by Piece, where he says piece by piece go. And yeah, I think I vaguely understand the theming of this album. It's kind of like, and this is what I'm going to interpret it as, but there's probably something bigger going on. But the theming is like facing something that is bigger than you, and I think that's portrayed in like the album art, with the little girl standing up to the giant glowing cross. I think that's what a lot of it is, and you can see that in songs like Slaughterhouse 2, which is standing up to rich people, I guess. I still think The Calm That Keeps You Awake is the worst song on this album. It's the worst song on this album. Derek might not like that take, but that's how I feel. It honestly, it doesn't feel like it has a unique moment to it. I feel like all the other songs, like Thirst, is really quick, and it has it's like the intro track, so it has the silence at the beginning and it builds up. Piece by Piece has Isaac, the Piece by Piece go. Suffocate has the poppy feature. Don't Reach For Me has the epic breakdown. Moss covers all and Take Me Home. They blend together and it's very eerie and creepy. Slaughterhouse 2, it also, I love this song because it blends from Take Me Home into this. I love the guitar riff at the beginning, and he has the Chris Motionless feature, which is whatever, but and then Blinding Faith was the lead single, so I think that was stick out to me as well. And then Sit and Mourn, similar to Thirst, it has it's very eerie feeling near the beginning, and you get the title of the album mentioned there. And overall, I think it's just a fantastic piece. And I haven't even mentioned yet how this album is a first for a Knocked Loose album for me. Like, the other albums aren't as accessible for other people, and I think this, first of all, being only 30 minutes, but also being so it feels, they did this with their EP as well, but I think this is another step above, where it all feels like it's very well thought out. I don't really have much more to add, but fantastic album. And Derek didn't say anything, so I'm disappointed.
Vinyl's so bad it made you like not like the album as much anymore. It's really crazy work. You would think they'd do some more quality control on that.
Yeah, I think the one I have is 1 in 10,000, so it's
yeah.
I'm surprised
That
you didn't say this is on your
Cycles
list, though.
back to me then.
It's good, but yeah.
Man, we're way off on Derek's list, guys.
I mean, I was onto it. I thought that Knocked Loose might just be Suffocate Pilled,
Yeah.
and that we shouldn't have. I did make that call out that it might just be Suffocate Bias, but
Suffocate is
we,
really
we
good.
we didn't end up switching it out. It was on our Preds for you, Derek. All right, so here's the thing: we're entering top 2 territory, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have been doing some soul searching the past 20 minutes or so
Oh,
because I could flip a coin and either of my number 1 or 2 could be album of the year. In my head, no matter which one of them,
Gonna
no
do
matter
it.
which one of them I pick for album of the year is going to be the weakest album of the year since we started this podcast 5 years ago.
Mine as well.
No matter which one I pick, if both of them deserve number 2, I don't feel confident in saying either of them deserve number 1. But, Jacob, you mind flipping a coin real quick?
Oh
flipping
my
a coin
God.
for album of the year is crazy.
Cheetah
Oh,
or Toronto?
Fuck Toronto.
No, I'm not gonna
Get
tell.
rid
I'm
of
not
it.
gonna tell. Here's the catch. I'm not telling you in my head which is heads and which is tails.
Let's see if I
Okay.
can flip this. Thing's heavy.
It sounded heavy earlier.
Cheetah.
Okay. My number 2 runner-up album of the year is Forever Undone by Letters Sent Home.
And there is no life beyond the grave, but there is a heaven right here if we just didn't interfere.
Damn, letters sent home being a coin flip is
Can we
crazy.
can we know if it moved or not?
It did not move.
Okay.
Damn.
okay.
It did not move. Ah, fuck! I had to say it, didn't I? Okay. Oh man, I feel like what more do I need to say about this band that I haven't already said? Almost, I've been singing this band's praises for the better part of 3 years at this point since we first talked about that Misery Loves Company EP, and this debut album was just about everything I could have hoped for from a debut album from this band. It is everything that I have loved about them from the past EPs that they have released. It is the epitome of my obsession with dark pop and my falling into that rabbit hole over the past few years. They were the band that really started my love for the genre and led me down the path of discovering artists like Mothica and Maggie Lindemann and stuff like that. This was my album of the year the day it came out and until very late into this year. And as stupid as it's going to sound, why this is not my album of the year is
Because of a
too
coin
much-
flip, admittedly.
No, no. If I'm being honest, the coin flip was just for drama. Like I felt fairly certain that this was going to be my number 2 for a while, but I've listened to my number 2 and number 1 albums 2 or 3 times in the past 24 hours alone. I've just gone back and forth listening to these 2 albums, and not once has it ever felt certain. So going back to what I was saying, like, too much of a good thing. How can that be a bad thing? Letters Sent Home released an 11-song debut album with next to no flaws. Every single song from this album ended up in my Spotify Wrapped, except for Elements, because it released in December last year and wasn't eligible to be in Wrapped. If it was, I listened to it more than enough for it to make Wrapped. That is 11 for 11. That is not something that Hot Milk did last year. That is not something that Bad Omens did with the Death of Peace of Mind in 2020. That is not something that any album has ever done for me. That every single song has made my Spotify Wrapped. Letters Sent Home did that. Why is that a bad thing? Because everything is so good, there aren't standouts. When I think of this album, I think of Forever Undone. I think of I Hope I Die First and Ignorance as my favorites from this album. And then it is literally the other 9 songs on the album. Yeah, like, I could make an order. But it is really just my 2 favorites, and then the rest of the album is all so good that they all blend together. I look at the middle of the track list. I look at 7. I look at Gaslight. I look at Sadist. I look at Hysteria. I look at Pedestal. They are all phenomenal songs. I have listened to them so many times throughout this year. But I don't feel particularly more attached to any of those songs than any other song. Whereas when I'm listing an album like Relica, A Spark is my favorite. And then there's Terminal, and then there's Dying Light, and then there's Physical. And then you keep going down the list, and like, I have emotional attachments to songs. I can make an order that makes me excited for specific songs on that album. And don't get me wrong, I get excited for every song on this album. But there isn't a standout other than my top 2. Everything is so consistently phenomenal and amazing that I am so emotionally invested in the concept of the album as a whole that I have not let myself get invested into specific songs. And I think that's really what it comes down to. Let me take my little prop here real quick to get into, to stop vague talking, to stop vague rambling real quick. There's a little note on the back of the lyric booklet here. It goes a little something like, "Thank you, Mom, for pushing through and for being an inspiration. You truly are causing earthquakes. Last but not least, thank you to the people in my former church who caused enough trauma to inspire a whole album."
Well,
so, yeah, this album is about religious trauma. I think that's the other reason why I am not as invested, because I grew up Catholic and I'm very distant from it now, but I never was necessary. I mean, you could argue that there was a bit of trauma in it, but not for the reasons that you would think. I don't really mind sharing it. Basically, what I'm hinting at is that I am an extremely picky eater. You guys all know the story of how that happened, but for the audience that doesn't, when I was very young, I accidentally drank orange juice out of a cup when I thought I was going to drink apple juice, and the taste left me so surprised, shocked, traumatized, or whatever, that it like scarred me from ever feeling comfortable trying new foods ever again. And to this day, that is still true. I am 24 years old and still get panic attacks at the thought of trying new foods. It's a problem. I'll deal with it eventually, surely. But the connection to, like, the only real religious trauma I have is that for one of the, I don't even remember, but there was some like bread wafer chip thing that we had to eat for
for communion. Yeah.
Communion, yeah.
Yeah.
That thing, I ate it, but that was a traumatic night. But like, as far as religious trauma goes, that's as far as I am personally connected to religious trauma. And I have connected much more with their past work that is more generally about mental health and emotional well-being and depression and anxiety and that sort of thing. And I think had they done that on this album, this is my album of the year. But because of the lyrical content that they went for, I think they did a phenomenal job executing on the vision of telling a story about growing up, living through religious trauma, and breaking free. But it's just not something that I can relate to as much, unfortunately. So for as good as this album is, I'm always going to be more attached to the 2 EPs that came, or well, at least the Misery Loves Company EP. I think I can safely put this above the Fire in Me EP, but yeah, but the thing is, they mention in this album, I wrote 1,000 songs about depression, but I'm still depressed. Sang 100 lines about progression, but I'm still a mess. And I think that kind of explains the lyrical direction that they took with this album. That they've done Misery Loves Company already. As much as I love it, you could do what Amaranth has done and release the same album for a decade in a row. Or in Letter Sent Home case, you realize we've written enough songs about depression and mental health and anxiety. Let's try something new. And that's what they did with this album. And it is phenomenal. I just don't connect with it as much. I feel like I did a really good job at delving into more specifics lyrically in our review of it back in April. So I don't want to spend too much time on that because I feel like really the story of this album for me is less about the album as a whole and more about why it isn't my album of the year. If you want to hear about more of my specific thoughts, that album review is out there, and most of my thoughts from that haven't changed. The things that have changed are some of my interpretations on some of the songs. So in Earthquake, something that I don't think I realized back in April when the album came out, it's a lot of the details across this album that I didn't pick up on are literally just a single line that can change the entire interpretation of a song that I just missed. In Earthquake, the opening track, Mama prayed I wouldn't be like her, so I went and became a nightmare to the people who turned her to smile while they were chasing her down. To me, that signifies that the religious trauma from this album was not purely growing up in a religious household. It stems from the religious trauma being passed down through the generations, I think, from the mom down to the character in the story, which I believe is Emily, the vocalist. I believe this is a story about like her upbringing, growing up through the trauma and whatnot, but it didn't hit me that I thought this was simply a story of growing up with it, and that generational piece of the religious trauma never really clicked with me until I had more time to listen to it instead of just for the April recap when we talked about it. And then there's a lot more talks about like, be careful who you worship sort of thing. A whole bunch of stuff. Scrolling through my notes. Hysteria, she lost herself on the devil's path. She lost herself in all she had. And then in 7, all the hatred you're spreading while you're trying to preach love, it has led me to believe that there is no Lord above. You finally make that realization that this upbringing that you've had is maybe not all that it's been made out to be. But the biggest differences that I've found are in the final stretch of songs from Gaslight through I Hope I Die First. In Gaslight, obviously, I think it's fairly well known what gaslighting is at this point, but it wasn't until I was reading the lyrics to get ready for this that I read the lyric in one of the verses. Don't be sad, you're just a child. Let's pretend you're an adult for now, just for right now. And there's some dark undertones to that one, I think. If you think about it a little bit more. I was only 14. You made me think I need medication. Sedate me. To escape you, I almost lost what made me, but I refound myself. I'm not going to talk about what I think that means, but I think if you read into it, you can interpret what that's talking about. And then you get into sadist. I don't think that I believe in God, but if there was one, I think he would be done with our selfish motivations, with our constant craving to be told that we're the bravest, with our perception of the greatest, with all the lies that we've been told and tell as we are sadists. That idea of you preach all of these things, but don't necessarily follow through with what you're telling other people to believe in. And then I think the biggest change that I've had was in I Hope I Die First. Taking that into context, I hope I die first because I know if you did, my life would forever be cursed. And you would simply move on even if it might hurt. Think about that line, and you would simply move on even if it might hurt. After you listen to the lyric of don't be sad, you're just a child. Let's pretend you're an adult for now, just for right now. To me, that interpretation changed from I Hope I Die First as a song about, I think it still has the meaning of I hope I die first because I love you so much and I don't want to live in a world without you. But what if there's another angle of it towards the religious angle of I hope I die first because of all of these things that you have done to me. And to me, like my interpretation of the story is the character of that I think Emily's trying to tell through this song is that I want to die first because I feel shame for the things that you did, but you don't feel any shame, and I think that's fucked up. I don't fully understand. I don't know entirely if that's a correct interpretation. I said it when we were talking about the Relica album as well, but I would love to do like a deep dive on this album lyrically because I feel like there is a lot to unpack here. Obviously, this is a very personal story that's being told throughout this album that I don't think I could ever make all of the correct interpretations. But yeah, there's as I said, if you want to get into more of my thoughts on this album, there's the review we did a few months ago. Instrumentally, vocally, lyrically, the entire package of this album is phenomenal. I don't feel like Letters Sent Home have earned the right to album of the year with this one.
That's fair. It's your list.
Yeah. I will. My last note actually is that for the second year in a row, 2 of my top 3 albums of the year came out on the same day. Last year with last year with Hot Milk and Concrete Castles both releasing on the same day. This year with Foxblood and Letters Sent Home both releasing on the same day as well. It's interesting.
Damn.
Didn't some of your EPs, spoiler, do that too?
3 of my top 10 songs released on the same day. That's true.
Oh, songs. Right.
Songs, yeah. I don't think EPs. Yeah. I think it's obvious that I love this album. I could talk about this album for longer if I wanted to, but we have a number of more albums to get through, and I don't want us to be here for that much longer. So I'm gonna pass the torch on to you, Justin, with my heart a little broken having had made that choice.
Had to happen at some point. Similar vein, I've been tossing up between my number 2 and number 1 for a little bit. Admittedly, they are kind of interchangeable. But I'm a big boy. I can make my own claim. My number 2 album of the year is Enemy's self-titled album.
We got this one.
Got this one.
That one was like the easiest one.
Well,
There was a
Frenia
part of
was
that
pretty easy
Frenia.
too.
Yeah.
Frenia should have been on there, but I feel
It
like we've been
should've.
talking about this one enough to where like this
Yeah.
one was a comfortable pick.
Yeah. We did have it. I thought this was like 10 through 8, not top 2, but
Yeah, so there was a world where this was my number 4 and Too Close to Touch was my number 2. But the more I looked back at this album, the more this album just as a whole stuck with me. I was doing some research, kind of drumming up my notes for this. And for some reason I had in my head that a lot of these songs dropped last year. So I was going to make the comment of this was my favorite 2024 album or 2023 album that released in 2024. But there was more songs that released this year than last year, and I was wrong on that. I think it was like ratio is like 7 or 8 to whatever. You know, it's a good majority were released this year, and I had been a patron of them for a while, so I got a lot of the songs early. So a lot of them I was a bit more familiar with, had more time with. Couple of these songs have stuck with me. Some of the songs I got some newfound love for, like Silver Bullet. That was one of the earlier songs that dropped. I think it was like first or second for this album cycle. And it's just really, really good. I really love the chorus in it. Kind of referencing that like wolf and like a monster. One of my favorite portions of that song is the guitar solo after the breakdown. Something this album does really right is the choruses, but also the instrumentation. There's a lot of good guitar work in this. This probably is my favorite hard rock album of this year. And it's just masterfully put together by guys that know what they're doing in this scene. Hell, some of these songs are featured in WWE. So like it's maddening how much this band has in the scene, but also there doesn't seem to be a lot of people talking about them because they don't go fucking anywhere besides Ohio. They need to tour some other places.
Seriously.
But to kind of do a little bit of a track by track, The Ledge, this great opener. It's got pretty much everything that you need in an Enemy song, but it's also not foreign and it's not like the same old thing. It's got a differing sound to it that just kind of sounds almost like the Overlook from Windwalkers, where it's got like kind of that dark guitar-y tone. The second before the second chorus, the lines, take another shot, God, I need relief, someone put me on my misery, I can't take it, was it worth the risk? Such good delivery on that. And then you get to Our Demise, which is one of the final songs for the album. One of the ones that really didn't stick with me all that much. It's one of the two that I really needed more time with to kind of really cement that and On the Edge. Mostly just because they're more recent songs and didn't really click with me immediately. Fake's been out for a while. Fake is great. One of the best Enemy songs. It's super consistent. Survive was one of the oldest for this album cycle, but I still go back to it just because the starting like audio bit reminds me of the when it was used in like the ladies and gentlemen like audio sound file was used in a Never Tell song, one of the remixes, and I always recognize that. I think it was like toward the end of one of the remixes, so you wouldn't notice it if you had like a faded or something. But that's also good. Broken Man is Enemy doing a ballad song that isn't slow. It works super well in the context of the album. Great all around. Waiting on You, I think, is probably of the singles that were not recently released. It's probably like one of my lower tracks on the album, and that's just because everything else is super high. It's nothing against the song in general, but everything else just clicks with me super consistently. I already talked about Silver Bullet. Hourglass is probably my favorite. I would have to really combat myself between that and The Cure, but I think Hourglass is probably my favorite on the album. Just because of the chorus, we've lost our minds somewhere in the sands of time, no reason and rhyme, stuck in the sands of time. It's the delivery on that, the chords, that familiar kind of guitar solo just works super well. It's all so good. On the Edge, one of my favorite lyric pieces from that is push me, break me, you can't never take me, make me your enemy. And it's got kind of like that almost like rap R&B kind of style delivery to it. Works super great. And then we'll close out with The Cure, which fantastic guitar solo. Rip the band-aid, pull the plug, can't set it off. I've had enough, just throw me in the ditch that I dug. The first breakdown, and then the second breakdown is, oh my god, I'm feeling sick, I'm always searching for a fix, medicating didn't do the trick, what will it take to break away from this vicious cycle? And then I think that's probably like the heaviest this album gets, and it's also good. This is hard rock coded to a T. The only stipulation I have between this and my final one is that I feel like my final album to crown album of the year is a better album. This is a collection of singles that I don't really think has a greater message or anything. Not to say that my album of the year does that I've found, but I think how my number one has presented itself is better in context than this album. And whether quality wise, those can really flip. I love Enemy, love what they do. I'm gonna listen to like basically anything they release at this point, no matter what direction they go. But it rests as my number two because I feel like that my number one just is more substantial as an album.
and they are unbelievably consistent. It's impressive how consistent.
One of the most consistent bands, I feel like, in this side of music. I'll echo your sentiment, Justin, because I feel like my number 2 here could be and maybe should be my album of the year, but my number 1 is just way too undeniable.
Is that what everybody's gonna say? I could say it too. Actually, no, I'm not gonna say it.
As an album, my number 1 is undeniable, but we'll get there. For now, we'll get to my number 2 album of the year, which is Brent 3, the collab album between Jeremy Zucker and Chelsea Cutler.
Saying I love you.
Your number 1's a scene album.
It's a scene album.
Oh.
And I don't know if this is a me first or an us first, but this is the first year that an artist has had back-to-back, not only top 10, but top 3 nominations. Because Chelsea Cutler won my number 3.
Frenia was my 2021 number 3. And this year's number 3.
I meant like back-to-back. Like in back-to-back years. Because I had
Chelsea Cutler back-to-back, I don't think so.
Oh, you had Jacob?
In the EP episode, I did.
Oh, okay.
Chelsea... I had sorry.
No, you're good.
I had Garden at number 2 last year and at number 2 this year, and then Picturesque at number 1.
Okay, Garden's kind of cheating, man.
Yeah.
Is Picturesque cheating though?
Whatever.
Anyway,
Whatever.
let's let Derek talk about his album.
So this album is like fall winter personified. It is like talking to a friend. It is like hearing somebody else's life experiences while relating to them and also feeling like you can insert yourself into their situations because of how well it's written. I think lyrics are this album's strong point. I think everything sounds absolutely phenomenal, but in terms of lyrics and storytelling, easily the best part of this album. The opener, I'm going to read a lot of lyrics, guys. Just a heads up. That is going to be the majority of this. This album tackles a lot of like family issues with relationships, both being in it and being unable to open yourself up, missing the person who you used to be, the person who you used to be with in a relationship, coming to terms with the fact that sometimes you really just need to let go because life is going to throw shit at you, and you're not going to be able to stop that. But the opener, Ashes and Rust, which is one of my absolute favorite openers songs of the year, is about, the experience of having a grandparent who wasn't really present in your parents' life and going to visit them and seeing how the bad parenting from this grandparent has impacted, your parents. In this case, it's a grandfather impacting a mother. It opens up backseat, 11 hours, rinse off in the shower. Good night. Glued to your favorite chair, one deck for solitaire, I'm fine. And I'll waste all the days in the August air, passing the time. Watch mom try to get your attention as she pours your wine. Goes into the chorus, who's gonna think of you after all that you put us through? If you won't change for us, then at least have the guts to pretend. How could you live a life where you don't leave your love behind? Life is ashes and rust till we all turn to dust in the end. Which gets to verse 2. Used to the usual, skipped Devin's funeral, oh dear. A card when I graduate, a call on my birthday, some years. And I'll tell my mom it's all right when she misses her dad. She says that she wants to be everything she never had. And then it goes back into the chorus, which is this slow, the instruments are kept a little bit more muted, and Chelsea Cutler's voice just sounds so good. They sing together on every single track on here besides track 7 and 8, where they both get their own little track. A-Frame, in contrast, is this beautiful, happy, folksy song, which I just realized I forgot to link in chat. Sorry, guys. About being content with being with someone no matter the circumstances. The line that I think exemplifies it best is, baby, it's your world. I'm just happy that you let me in. That, you could move out to the country and build this A-frame house in the middle of nowhere and you'd still be happy just because you're with this person and experiencing life with them. But then it gets sad again when we get to I Miss You and Terrible Things, which are both songs where you're thinking about a person who you used to be in a relationship with and what they're thinking and if they still think of you. I'll go to I Miss You, where Chelsea Cutler sings to Jeremy Zucker's character, "Are you happy? Do you feel like you're a human again? Are you anxious? Does it take up all the space in your head? When you wake up, do you recite your dreams on your phone? But who's listening since you've run from every person you've ever known?" And the chorus, "'Cause I miss you. Is this exactly what you thought would become? Do you see me how you see everyone? 'Cause I need you. Could you try to love somebody for once?" Which he answers back, "Is it quiet like the house when both your brothers moved out and the dog's gone so nobody's next to you on the couch? Are you careful when you pick the broken glass off the floor? Are you working on that godforsaken temper of yours?" And he sings chorus back to her. But then we get happy again with Black and White, which is about finding the person who gets to be your home after heartbreak and feeling vulnerable and scared and afraid, but that they put color into your black and white, that they are your light when things are so bad. And then, believe it or not, it gets sad again because we go to 5 minutes, which I still haven't fully determined the meaning behind, but I'm pretty sure it's about reminiscing on somebody who like committed suicide off a bridge 5 minutes from your house and like looking into the water and wanting to see their reflection and like thinking about the memories that you had with that person. Really, really depressing, if I'm being so for real. Like out of all the topics, it's one of the harder listens. And then we get to the individual songs that Jeremy Zucker and Chelsea Cutler get. Jeremy Zucker gets a 1 minute, 20-second song called Toothbrush Song. And it's got this very faint kind of like, you know, like the Sonicare electric toothbrushes, how they make that like noise when they're on. There's a very faint sound of that playing in the background for the whole minute 20. And it's about like reminiscing about how you used to live with your significant other that you're now broken up, and like thinking about how they'd always like forget to brush their teeth in the morning, so you'd set their toothbrush out for them so they'd remind him, and like the little things that you do in a relationship when you care about somebody else like that and missing that person, which goes into Chelsea Cutler. It's the counterpart song, Love You Into Loving Me, which is my favorite song off the album. And she sings, verse 1, "You let go when you feel hollow, and I hold tighter when I'm scared. You could find home in a person, but you won't let me take you there." In the chorus, "I can show you silver linings. I can give you all you need. I can be your crying shoulder, but I can't love you into loving me." Verse 2, "We can blame it on the timing or your fear of being known. Laying quiet side by side, not saying anything. The silence says the things that you don't." And especially the final chorus on this, all the instruments cut out and there's a bunch of reverb on her voice, and it is probably the single most beautiful instance of music I heard all year. We get to And the Government too, which is about like a long distance relationship, something that I really connected with. And it's like, you know what? I'd move heaven and earth to be with you, like anything in our way, and the government too can all go fuck themselves. Like, and Just Breathe is among all the other depressing topics and heavy topics. It's a reminder that sometimes you just need to breathe and things are going to be okay. And there's a time to just take a moment to live and be and not let your anxieties consume you. That would be a good note to end the album on, but unfortunately, this is Brent 3. So we get to be sad again for the unfortunately named Good Things closer, where it goes back to that relationship aspect. Chelsea Cutler singing, "Laying awake on my side of the bed, angry about something new that I did, because you fuck with my feelings to get me upset. I start to cry, you call me obsessed. I think about you and I reminisce who you might love and how they might kiss. You at night when you get in bed next to her. I hope that she cares because I was never sure." And she sings in the chorus, "And I know good things never stay. People always change and life gets in the way. Before you know, heroes always fall. One day, don't we all?" And then Jeremy Zucker sings back, "We took the long way to get to your house. 2 open beers. Your parents freaked out at the way that she yelled when they caught you with weed. Your dad screaming, 'How could you do this to me?' Stared at the sign and fell into the pool, shooting the shit about life after school, but I threw it away just to get on the road. I'd give it a year to see how it goes." And it feels like when they're describing this, like you feel like, oh, I lived this with my friends. I can like see this happening in my head. And it's just one full 11-track album of you feeling like you're slipping into someone else's shoes while also being aware of the way that you can connect to these individual scenarios or specific lines in the songs. I definitely listened to this album the most out of any album this year. Way more so than anything else in my top 10, and it only came out a month ago, so that should give you a little indication.
Yeah.
I've loved Jeremy Zucker and Chelsea Cutler for years and years and years now. I think we're going on 7 or 8 years. And it's crazy how they just keep getting better. And there was Brent 1 and Brent 2 before this, and they were EPs, and this is the final in the Brent trilogy. And it makes me sad that we're not going to get another one, but also what a beautiful note to end on. Lyrically, vocally, even instrumentally, to accent the way that they want you to feel with a lot of these songs. It's just so beautifully done. I love this album front to back. Another one that, much like Chelsea Cutler's Stellaria last year, my number 3 album of the year, has stuck with me. This is going to be one that, if Brat's going in every summer, this is going in every fall, winter, because it is truly perfect acoustic fall, winter, seasonal depression vibes, the time to reflect on the year and breathe. This album is really something special. These two work together in a way that I have not heard from any other artist. Yeah, my number 2 album of the year, Brent 3.
Good stuff. I'll tell you much more because I haven't heard it.
Mood.
Jacob, round us out before we get into our album of the years.
Yes, sir.
Alrighty.
No pressure.
There's lots of pressure, actually. I feel like you guys have this one on my list too. My number 2 album of the year goes to Boston Manor with their album Sundiver.
Mark that.
I'm sorry for doubting you, Jake. The words at 7:07 p.m. were typed by me. I doubt Boston Manor is top 5.
Yeah, so the reason this is so high is because of the way it connects to the previous album. And after doing a little bit of digging for myself, I've come to the conclusion that the previous album was about like the negative effects of drug use, and this is the positive effects of drug use. This is the high. This is what it's like being high. So while the last album was very dark and heavy, this one feels very light and airy. And both opening tracks, I'm going to compare a lot to the previous album, by the way. Both opening tracks, named Datura Dusk and Datura Dawn, respectively, they have the same melody, but again, one is dark and heavy and one is light and airy, and I think they have different words as well. Yeah, they do. And yeah, so this is basically a contrast to the previous album. And I think it's executed phenomenally. Both these albums I think are better than Welcome to the Neighborhood, just because of the concept.
That phrase, though.
Yeah, I can't believe I'm saying that. And I think this album being like a part 2 to the previous album made that other album higher on my list. So my favorite song is Why I Sleep. I don't know what's up with me this year and like loving the songs that come out of interludes. Maybe it's because we didn't get a lot of good openers. These are like the second openers. But I think that's my favorite part of the album. I know Derek, in the review, you said you didn't really like Morningstar.
Grew on me.
I think you didn't like it because there's like a break or a pause, or it didn't flow the best. But I absolutely love the little pause, and then you get the riff from Why Asleep. And it's just so aggressive. But then it turns into like this groovy song. And I'm gonna read some lyrics here. I'm gonna read the chorus, which is very catchy, by the way. Searching for more, afraid of what you're looking for. Dig a little deeper now, dig a little deeper now. Wash away your fears. Tell me what I need to hear. Dig a little deeper now, dig a little deeper now. And just the way that sounds, man. I love how it pierces my ears. And then after that we go to Fornix, which I think is my least favorite song. Mainly because I don't really get it. And it's probably just some like chemical brain thing that I don't get. Because I think we did the research. Fornix is a part of the brain. And I think Dissolve is a very underrated song on this album. Yeah, I don't really have much to add, actually, but I think this album deserves this place because of the contrast with the other album. I think it's very interesting to see. They are contradicting what they've said on the previous album. But that's what Addiction does. And I think that's a really creative and cool way to get it across. So that's why this is my number 2.
Beautiful pick. Banger album.
But not in your list. Oh man. We totally whiffed Derek's list.
Well, I think it's about time to see how hard we all whiffed on each other's, because it is time to reveal not just our album of the year, but each of our own top 10 album of the year. So obviously, as we said at the start of the episode, we do not have time to discuss our full top 10s in detail. We are already approaching 2.5 hours on this episode alone without even discussing any of our 10 through 6 picks. So I'm glad we cut this 1.5 compared to previous years.
Yeah,
But without any further delay, without any further delay, my top 10 albums of 2024 at number 10 is Exit Emotions by Blind Channel.
What?
At number 9 is
Huh?
Make Them Suffer with their self-titled album.
We got that one.
Got it.
At number 8 is Lost in Hollywood with their debut album, The Beauty of Death.
We
Nope.
didn't get that one.
No.
At number 7 is Normandy with their album Dopamine.
I said it. I said it.
Fuck.
At number 6 is The Warning with their album Keep Me Fed.
Okay, we
Yeah,
got
that one.
And to recap, my number 5 album of the year was Second Shadow by Inertia. Number 4, Secrets of the Future by Relica. Number 3, Whalefall by Foxblood. Number 2, not on a coin flip, is Forever Undone by Letters Sent Home, which means my album of the year is Things Are Different Now by Rain City Drive.
Yeah.
He has the prop. He has the prop.
Good prop.
All right. So, Rain City Drive are back on top. Album of the year 2020 with To Better Days. One of my favorite songs of all time in Waiting on You from their 2022 album, but overall that album whiffed. This album cycle was a return to glory, as far as I'm concerned. They have practically perfected the post-hardcore meets pop rock formula. Matt McAndrew is the GOAT vocalist, at least in Queens at this point. His voice is undeniable. The way that he sings his melodies and the emotion in his voice is just unparalleled. Like, he's never the first name to come to mind when it comes to, like, most talented vocalists, but to my ears, just consistently one of the most enjoyable voices to listen to on anything that he sings. Whether it's a slow song, whether it's a faster song, whether it's just whatever, you get the idea. Lyrically, my interpretation on this album is, again, it's another album that's dealing with a fractured or a fracturing relationship and coping with the fallout and the emotions of a relationship that is falling apart. Both like the who's to blame, what could I have done differently, like longing for the better days, wanting to get out, but also thinking like maybe I should hold on. Anything you could think of in regards to the fallout of a relationship, I feel like is generally touched on across this entire album front to back. I do think that it also encapsulates the album title of Things Are Different Now quite well. With all of the talks of like separation. So just for example, I'm going to pull out a couple of lyrics here. You say you're looking for some concrete closure, but you're the one who keeps the door wide open. To me, that means that from Matt's perspective, his special other, in this case, is the one that's trying to end the relationship. But then you get later in the album, on Medicate Me, dressed in all black like the Reaper, way she'd go down, I could keep her. And to me, that's signifying that like Matt's still thinking about like, okay, maybe like I don't want this to end. And then you keep going later in the album, in Over Me, thought that you'd grow old with me, now you're over me. It keeps bouncing back and forth on who's to blame, who's at fault, can we keep going as a pair? And yeah, I think it's not the most tightly connected theme of an album title to the lyrics on the album. Like I think back to last year with A Call to the Void by Hot Milk. Like the idea of A Call to the Void was referenced multiple times throughout the album, and like that reaching out into the darkness and like no one's there to save you. Like I feel like thematically my past albums of the year have connected album title to lyrics better or in a more impactful way. But I still think that it is worth giving them credit for being able to make an album that makes this much sense, for lack of a better word. And as I said, Matt McAndrew is just like one of the goats in the scene at this. Just one of the absolute greatest clean vocalists that we have. From his vocal deliveries in Medicate Me, I know I've highlighted Rory's vocal delivery when I talked about Medicate Me as one of my favorite songs of the year. But Matt also belts out some absolute banger deliveries as well. And then in Wish You the Best, I know you guys aren't a huge fan of that song, but that's one of my favorite songs on this album.
I like that.
The vocal delivery on the I Only Wish You the Best at the end of the song, where it's like, I only wish you the best, I only wish you the best. Like, I love that vocal delivery too, like the kind of dragged out vocal delivery. And then obviously, as Jacob mentioned when you mentioned it as one of your favorite albums of the year earlier, Sacrifice is the closer. the vocal deliveries across that song, just it is one of the most unique Rain City Drive songs to date. And Matt is just absolutely belting out across that entire song as well. The witness the weakest among us must die into that instrumental break. Lay at the altar again and again before the breakdown hits. And then just the would you sacrifice, like the repetitive would you sacrifice, like in the slower tone, and then when the song builds and eventually he just belts it out. It's just his control over his voice to work in the sad and the powerful and heartfelt, emotional, and the desperate vocals. It's just immense talent that I appreciate on every song on this album. And I think why I am more okay with this being my album of the year than Letters Sent Home, for as much as I have praised that, I feel like when I talk about Letters Sent Home, I talk about them different to any other band. I don't know if you guys have noticed that, but like in my head, I feel like the way I talk about Letters Sent Home, I don't talk about any other band in the way that I talk about them. With Rain City Drive, I actually think this album has a lower floor than Letters Sent Home with Forever Undone. But again, with that album, everything is so good that it almost kind of blends together. But to me, there is a clear pecking order on what my favorite songs are. Whereas with Letters Sent Home, I know I'm taking Ignorance and I Hope I Die First with me into the future. And those songs are always going to be really special to me. It's the deep cuts. Once you get down to like your fourth, fifth favorite, how many of those songs are really going to have a lasting impact on me? As much as I've listened to those songs and I love them on Letters Sent Home, I don't know how much the songs themselves, outside of the context of the album, are going to have an individual impact on me. I go down the track list on this album: Wish You the Best, Medicate Me, Never Bloom, Sacrifice, and the list keeps going. Concrete Closure, Over Me, Frozen. We're 7 tracks deep now, and I'm still having longevity with these songs that stand on their own individual ground. Not to say that the songs from Forever Undone don't stand on their own individual ground too, but I feel like these ones stand better. They're more sturdy on their own 2 feet outside of the context of the album. And it really is these little nitpicks that at such a high caliber of looking back at a year of music, what are the smallest of differences that differentiate one album from another? And to me, it is really just that I think some of these songs on this album are going to be more memorable down the line and have more individuality than some of the deeper cuts and my deeper favorites on Forever Undone. I don't feel like I talked about this album nearly as long as I did Forever Undone, but I don't feel like I have too much more to say. Just an absolute return to form from Rain City Drive in every way. The songs are overall way more memorable with incredibly catchy hooks and melodies, and the instrumentation fully helps serve Matt's voice, which is the true standout of this album. Rain City Drive, for maybe the first time in the history of this podcast, making a run for Album of the Year for a second time.
Yes, I think so.
Right? Yeah.
I don't think any other band is.
So in what year is that? 2021. Yes, 2021. Now I would say Sleep Token was my favorite album, but I didn't say that on the episode,
Yeah.
so it doesn't count.
I have a feeling next year with Prada and Bad Omens putting out albums, we'll probably
And
have...
potentially Sweet Token, too.
And Valiant Hearts.
God.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
dude, it's thank God. After this year, man, it can be next year already.
The interesting thing for me is that this year, like, so many of my favorite bands did drop albums, but a lot of them didn't end up making my top list. Like, I think I have a feeling you guys probably predicted Future Palace to be in my top 10, and they did not make it.
Did we have it there?
We said something about it. I was more confident that you would keep it. I did not expect Blind Channel. That never came up in our discussion.
Yeah,
Blind Channel was the perennial gatekeeper to my top 10 this entire year. Are you better than Blind Channel? Yes or
Wild.
no?
Never heard those words in my life.
Well, I said it. I said it when we reviewed Exit Emotions back in March. Blind Channel finally released a consistent album.
It was
finally
a
reached their
contention
full
for my
potential.
list.
I'm
Speaking
gonna
of my
pass the torch
list.
to you, Justin. Yeah.
Yeah, let's get
All right.
to it. My number 10. You guys ready?
Yep,
All right, get the list
All
ready,
right.
Derek.
I'm on it.
My number 10 is Boys of Fall with their self-titled album.
Fuck, I forgot about that.
I almost had that too. I almost called that one.
This, along with Makari, was my albums that stuck with me throughout the year. My number 9 is Destroy Rebuild Until God Shows with Until
Oh
God
my
Shows.
God.
Dude, we went hard on Justin this year.
We're so cooked.
Number 8 is Give Me. This is Galleons with Violent Delights.
Okay, we got that one.
God.
Number 7 was the Home Team, Crucible of Life. Number 6 was Cancer Vice, 0 Hour. And then a recap. Number 5 was Makari with Wave Machine. Number 4, Too Close to Touch, 4 Keeps. Number 3, Frenia, Your Heaven is My Hell. Enemy with their self-titled. My number 1. Boys, I have the easiest job ever. I have to follow up Jake. My number 1 is Rain City Drive.
Wow.
Damn.
Wow.
Easiest job ever because Jake basically said
Damn.
everything else.
Hell yeah.
I got you.
You did
Wow, this is crazy.
Is did this happen to Rain City Drive last time too?
It didn't happen with Rain City
No.
Drive. The only other time this happened was Noia. It was on both. Jake
Oh,
and
that's
Ryan's list.
right.
Well, no,
And-
color decay too.
Oh, the color decay. That's right. I forgot about that.
I totally stole your color decay thunder there.
We also had
I
Bad
mean-
Omens at 2, right?
yeah,
Yes.
at the same top two.
Yeah.
Justin, I'm proud of you.
I can't believe
you.
this. Wait, where's Floya? Where's Floya?
Floyo didn't make it.
Damn.
Floyo was number 12.
Oh man.
It was right below Rim by Wolves. Yeah.
Okay,
Can't
which we
believe
also
we-
had on our
I
list.
can't
so-
believe we
Yeah.
forgot drugs.
Yeah.
We should've
that-
done He like latched onto that too, very obviously.
Drugs was a late addition. I won't talk about this much more. I'll kind of recap it toward the end. But Drugs was kind of a late addition. It really was like last 2 weeks. I really considered it and threw it on there. But yeah, to kind of get into Rain City Drive and why I think it's my album of the year. Kind of already mentioned it in my Enemy recap. It's the best album that was consistently put out this year. Thanks Vinyl Prop. Or Frisbee Prop, however we call it now. This album, top to bottom, fantastic. Like Matt did fantastic work on this. The lyrics, the instrumentation, the consistency through each different song, it's all flows so incredibly well. Each of these stands on their own, but then also throughout the album, you don't skip any of these. These are songs that just you will listen to, whether you like it or not. It's your personal preference, but I feel like it's a it's a crime to skip through any of these songs and not listen to the album top to bottom. It's fantastic. The production level, the quality of this, it over exceeds in trying to improve what the self-titled album did a couple years back, and gave me a better appreciation for Matt. That, as well as like seeing them live and just seeing not only the amount of care that they put into each of their songs, but also the willingness to differentiate the songs enough from their live setting and the studio setting. Some of these songs that I listened to that normally were pretty heavy or like instrumentally kind of heavier or had a lot more instrumentation to them were toned down in the live setting and had acoustic brought into it. I think Medicate Me and Concrete Closure, I think, were the two that kind of were like the most different in the live setting. And those were just fantastic. They were great. That kind of gave me a newfound appreciation just for Matt's vocals alone. And not only that, but like as I went through and kind of did my recaps throughout this year, constant thought was in my head was like, what? Even if this year is kind of like my lesser years for albums to talk about this year, what am I gonna remember 2024 for, and what album do I think is going to make a better statement than that? For me, I was gonna say For Keeps, but I didn't connect with that as much as I was hoping for. That's why it was going to be number 2, and then I and switched it over. So I thought back and went through all my albums, and like there is no contention. Like Rain City Drive nailed this one out of the park. I really truly think that this is their concrete,
Magnum
you know.
opus?
Well, I was referencing some other albums like
Oh,
Bad Omens, that album. I forget its
Death
name.
of Peace of
Can't
Mind.
think. Death of Peace of Mind. The Too Close to Touch album. Like this is Rain City Drive's defining album at this point. I think any album they put up at this point will be compared to this album.
Yeah.
I would be shocked if bands in the scene did not use this album as like a stirring point on how to make this kind of music, because this is the pinnacle.
so you like this better than To Better Days then?
For 2024, yes. To Better Days, what year did that drop?
21. Oh, that was 20?
2021. That was like,
No, I'm wrong.
2020.
was it 2020? Let me look back at my list.
Years.
Yeah,
Yeah, that-
because I had Noia.
Yeah, that had to compete with Noia, Point North's album that year. Had to compete with Bill Murray. Like for me personally, I think this album is better than To Better Days. To Better Days probably would be like number 3 if I had to go back into 2020. Because I wouldn't really rank Self Deception higher anymore. For some reason, I was really into that album. But yeah, I would say this album is probably their best.
I did not see it coming. I did not see it coming.
I didn't either.
Surprise.
I thought
it was
Cantervice. I thought Cantervice was number 1. That's what I was expecting.
I thought about. I was actually thinking about it like this weekend on what really would be my album of the year. Galleons was in contention for shifting upward to at least be talked about in my top 5. I don't think it would have been my album of the year, but that album was too bloated with songs that I really didn't get into all that much. It has some higher highs than their self-titled, but I feel like that album was just too bloated. And the lows on that album, it's the same issue that I have with Yonder from Valiant Hearts, where I think the lows are lower, but the highs are like much higher. And I've definitely gotten into stuff on Galleons, but overall, like I'm happy with my list. I'm ready for 2025 though.
That's where I'm at.
Derek.
All right. So let's pull your guys' list up.
Yeah.
I know you didn't have my number 10. If you did, one of you is psychic and has like read my mind over the past week. My number 10 album of the year is A Piece of Me I Never Let You Find by Cane Hill.
No
No.
way. No.
I listened to that after we did the recap, and I really, really loved it. It was very, very
Yeah,
good.
you didn't say a damn thing about it after the
Nope,
recap.
There's no way we would have got it. So.
No.
My number 9 is American Dream by 21 Savage. My number 8 is The Death Card by Fame on Fire.
Wow.
That
I-
made your list?
Unironically was top 5 until about a week ago.
That's
And
crazy.
you know, on the home team, I was like, I would always put this album on and another one. I listened to that Fame on Fire album so much this year because it was so like painfully great. It never like it's just like a constant 8 the whole way across, and I'm like, damn, I just really wanted some mediocre metalcore this year, and they delivered.
Wow.
Did we get any of his list?
Hang on. I think we got
There's a
number 1.
chance.
Number 7 is Chromacopia by Tyler the Creator. Number 6 is Babyface by Arshio.
No, we should have got that.
I tried to hint at it a little bit in the other
Ah.
awards episodes.
Yeah.
Number 5, we talked about Hit Me Hard and Soft by Billie Eilish. Number 4, The Crucible of Life by the Home Team. Number 3, Brat by Charlie XCX. Number 2, Brent 3 by Chelsea Cutler and Jeremy Zucker. And number 1, I did a little bit of lying. My number 1 album of the year is You Won't Go Before You're Supposed To by Knocked Loose.
Yeah!
We got one.
Let's go.
I got one. It's not the one that I thought it would be.
I thought I gave it away too much when I said that because I talked about not having a copy of the Knocked Loose album like a couple times, and then I was like, "Oh yeah, I don't have vinyl for any of my top 3." And I'm like, oh, shit.
I don't know if I ever would have been able to live down taking Knocked Loose out of our 5 zine bands on the list for thinking you were Suffocate Pill. Jesus Christ.
No, so
Yeah.
the five that we had for you were
Uh-huh.
Too Close to Touch, Boston Manor, Bill Murray, Knocked Loose, which we got. We had Rain City Drive, but at last minute changed it for Fifth and Autopsy.
So I can tell you, Boston Manor was 11th. It just missed.
Yeah.
Ah.
Bill Murray.
If he didn't listen to Kane, we shouldn't have pushed so hard for Kane Hill. We fucked up, boys.
We could've got it.
you guys would have gotten
My
that.
dad, I put it in the recap.
Bill Murray was 15th. Rain City Drive, I know he took it out, was 17th. Fit for an Autopsy was 18th. What was the other one? Too Close to Touch. It didn't make my top 20. I didn't even consider that as an album.
Wow.
This is probably the least I have ever listened to an album of the year by a long shot. I don't even know if this cracks my number 20 like most played albums this year. The problem is that it's just completely undeniable. And as a piece of artistry altogether, objectively, I did not hear a better album this year. I couldn't bring myself to rank anything else above this because of that. You know, I listened to Brent 3 probably 5-6 times as much as I did this album. But the problem is that once I started this album, if I was in the mood for it, I am like sat in my seat. I am here to experience this album because it really is an experience. I've never had an album of the year that I've playlisted so few songs from. I think I have, besides Suffocate, like 2 maybe or 3 put into a playlist.
I have the whole thing in my playlist.
I couldn't justify randomly getting Moss Covers All. But I just, it's so well done. And I think above anything else, what sells this for me is the production. I think it's pronounced Wizard Blood is how it's like WZRDBLD. This guy cooked. You can tell that he works with rap and hip hop artists because he made sure that the bass hit in this song, and everything is so punchy and crisp and clean. It makes, alongside the vocal dynamic that
Not
again
here.
not there.
Not here.
Justin, you mentioned your job is kind of easy. My job's kind of easy too, because Jacob said a lot of what I was going to touch on. But having that production value mixed with the 3 vocalists takes what would otherwise be a little bit of a difficult album listen by just having Brian's vocals and really transform it into something so dynamic and fun and interesting to listen to. It's unsettling. It's creepy. It's entertaining. There are lyrical motifs. I think you hit the nail on the head. I got the exact same thing of standing up to something that's bigger than you, whether it be your mental health, religion, rich people. And I mentioned when we first reviewed it that I didn't like the Chris Motionless feature. I didn't think it fit. I grew out of that very quickly. I think they killed it.
Yep.
Everything just fits and flows so well, especially Don't Reach For Me into Moss Covers All, Take Me Home and Slaughterhouse. Like, it's really well done. I really like The Calm That Keeps You Awake, but I agree. I'm with you. I think it is the weakest song on here. But just because I wouldn't playlist it doesn't mean that it adds or detracts anything from the experience. I love hearing it every time it comes on. I think the biggest selling points of this, besides Suffocate, I'm Suffocate pilled, is Thirst and Sit and Mourn. I think Thirst is a perfect opener, especially for this album. Sit and Mourn is one of the best closers I heard all year. It's one of the best closers I've ever heard, really, in the context of an album as a whole. It's just, in listening to it so few times, because I really had to be in the mood for this. This isn't just something that I could sit and put on the same way that I could The Home Team or Fame on Fire. Like, I needed to be in the mood for Knocked Loose. But I went back and listened to it, and it's just undeniable. There's no other album this year that made me feel the way this one did. There's no other album this year that felt like as complete of an experience. I didn't feel the same range of emotions, like listening to Brent 3. I'm going to feel happy, and then I'm going to sad, and I'm going to feel nostalgic. But none of them like shook me to my core in the same way that listening to this in the right headspace did for me. And I'm pointing to my second monitor where I have it up on Spotify. But no, I don't know how much this one will stick with me moving forward, which I think is odd for a album of the year. But for this year alone, like you said, Justin, what defined the year? What albums am I going to remember? It's that one picture that I posted back in the summer, and it was like Brat overlaid over this cover. That's going to be my 2024. I'm going to remember Knocked Loose. I'm going to remember Brat. I'm going to remember Brent 3. Like, I probably won't remember a lot of the albums in the lower half of my list as I do in other years, but this album was so good, and I will never forget the experience of feeling unsettled by it, of feeling that way after hearing it for the first time, the way that I was able to replicate that same feeling. Like, this album, I didn't get desensitized to it at all. I just kept that same feeling and enjoyed it even more. Realistically speaking, this should be like number 3, like where you had it, Jacob, but I could never make the argument for myself that this, as just an objective work of art, deserved any less than album of the year.
That's like what I said about their EP when I had it at number 1.
Yeah,
I think this is the next step, because first of all, individual songs can be listened to. Like, I don't think the EP had like choruses or verses, right? Or it did. It was all verses, I guess. Yeah.
This is one of those albums that makes me scared in the same way that like Fuck Everything and Run did from Stand Atlantic, because I'm like, they really nailed this.
Yeah.
If there's a band that can make it work, it's Knocked Loose, for an album that somehow is better than this. But I also said the same thing about Stand Atlantic, and they won my runner-up for most disappointing album of the year. Let's see.
They did it with the EP, and they did this. This is better than that EP.
Absolutely.
So I think it is very possible.
But if we're making the Stand Atlantic comparison, they did Pink Elephant into Fear.
True.
That is true. We'll see. But for now, I'm comfortable with this being my album.
What you're saying about that Knocked Loose album is making me feel better about my Rain City Drive AOTY pick. It's making me feel better about making that choice. So
hard decisions had to be made.
Yeah.
So 2 Rain City Drives and a Knocked Loose. Jacob?
On 2 opposite ends of the spectrum.
Oh, man. Alrighty. So, my number 10 album, and I'm going to say this now. I talked myself into this when we reviewed it. I don't know how I did that, okay? I'm just going to say that. My number 10 album is Make Them Suffer by Make Them Suffer.
We expected 10.
Yeah, we got that one.
We had it as a maybe. We had it as a maybe, but it did walk in.
Yeah, we had it through 10 through 6.
I didn't realize I'm so readable. All right, my number 9 is The Dust of Human Shape by Ghost Atlas.
Shit,
No,
we
I,
discussed that. but didn't put
I
it
almost
on
called
the
that one.
list.
Yep.
My number 8 is Posthuman Next Gen by Bring Me the Horizon.
Yep.
No.
Yep.
Oh yeah, we did.
Yeah.
Sorry, I
just
didn't see you breathe.
Abbreviated as boomf.
My number 7 is Let Me Be Your Womb by Crywolf.
Yep.
Yep.
My number 6 is Hyperviolence by Wind Waker.
Yep.
Yep.
What the hell, man?
You're welcome on that
All
one.
but Okay. And my number 5 we talked about is Cure by Era. Number 4 is Things Are Different Now by Rain City Drive. My number 3 is You Won't Go Before You're Supposed to by Knock Loose. My number 2 is Sundiver by Boston Manor, as you can see here.
Just
Oh,
reverse.
sorry. And my number 1, I have to stand up for.
Oh, okay.
I wonder if
We're
I
getting
should
a
go get my
presentation.
copy too.
No,
I
he's
feel-
gone. He's out.
I think this guy has multiple copies.
My number 1 album is Bill Murray, American
Yeah.
Motorsports.
Had that
I
one.
have to put on my head.
Getting these concussions, throw my head against the wall, turning nothing into something, making everything my fault. But you got me top, begging you to stay.
The Canadian being the most
The-
American out of us.
The Canadian Bill Murray. This hat doesn't fit with my headset on, but that's okay. Specifically, the deluxe edition. I'm cheating this year, but I think it's okay because they both released in the
came
same
out
year.
this
Yeah, they
Yeah.
both released this year. You're fine.
So, this is totally sideways. Here we go.
How long is that gonna stay on?
Well, we'll see. So it really feels like Bill Murray has found his sound with this album, and I don't think there's like some revolutionary story or concept going on here, like a Boston Manor or a Knock Loose had, but I think this is just a really fun album that Johnny has created, and this album is about a lot of like personal struggles and the struggles of his friend. Apparently, I learned that Empty Handed is actually about his friend who and this album means a lot to me because of the way and the reason it's number 1 is because of the way I've connected with people over it, and it's really I've really bonded with my brother over it, which is something we don't normally do for music because he hates metal, he hates screaming, so there's not a lot of overlap into what we listen to, but he is a big Knox fan. So I showed him 2016 Cavaliers, and he really liked it. It's a good way to connect. And then in October, I was a groomsman at a wedding, and I sat beside a guy at dinner who had I Love Beer, which is not on this album, of course, but he had it as his first dance song at his wedding, which is freaking insane to like randomly be beside this guy. And I'd never spoken to him before, and we just got to talking about music at dinner, and I mentioned Bill Murray. He's like, "Oh, I know Bill Murray. I danced to him at my wedding." And of course, it was the second time me and my girlfriend got to see him this year. Well, not this year. We saw him in 2023, and then we saw him this year. And we put on our cowboy hats, and I remember in the first song, which was Better Hell, where he does the in the chorus, I flung my head backwards like I just did, and my hat fell off. Immediately core memory, because it was really embarrassing, but it was also really funny that it was like the first song, and immediately it just fell off. the album has a whole southern twang to it, if you will. And I think Better Hell has one of the most memorable lyrics of all time, being so when they ask who hurt you, point the finger at myself, but I think of you. And honestly, it's like it just hits so hard. And then we have Miss Me, which is like the most emotional song on this record. And I think then we have Spinning You Around, which there's videos of me singing that song, spinning around somewhere, not here. You won't see them here, but yeah, it's just been a really great way to bond with people, and it's an album that I can share and not be afraid of, oh, it's too metal, it's too scary. It's an album I can say, oh, my boss, for example, I haven't shared it with him, but I feel like he would like this album because he really likes country. It's just a really cool way to bond over music. I put the deluxe edition in here because we have Bout a Cashew, which I think really I like. When that song released, I really loved the breakdown in it. It's very unique. The only other song that I can think of it that reminds me of it is a totally different, like it's a Crystal Lake song, which is like a full-on deathcore song, which has the breakdown that gets slower and slower. The song is called Disobey, I think.
That sounds right.
I think that's what it's called. The Livin', Laughin', Lovin' feature of Hastings, really cool to see, because at that first Bill Murray show I saw was Hastings. He was there. He was the opener. And that's another artist that my girlfriend and I have really bonded over. The End, I'm going all over the place because I'm into deluxe songs right now, but The End has the uncredited Gabby Rose feature, which makes me hopeful that she will be in future projects. I think the one thing I will say about this album is it feels a lot of songs feel very similar. And it's not a bad thing. I think this is definitely a stepping stone for Johnny. And I think that adding features like Gabby, or even adding her to the band as would make it would take it to the next step. And I remember in the whatever recap, June recap, I guess, we reviewed this, and I literally said, oh, I wish I could pick his brain and say, hey, where would you put Livin', Laughin', Lovin' and Bout a Cashew on the album? And then literally like 4 months later, he releases the deluxe, and there they are. So I have ordered this on deluxe. It hasn't come yet, but I have ordered it. And honestly, there's no other artist that has convinced me to give a genre another chance that I thought I hated.
A very well-earned album of the year from you, I think.
Yes. I think that live show really sealed the deal, I think. And I can't forget freaking saxophone. Justin mentioned it, Year of the Saxophone. There's plenty of songs on here that have great saxophone, including Straight Through You, which I think is probably my second favorite song on the album. behind Talking to Your Ghost. All Gas is a song that was a single that I didn't think I liked, but after hearing what it was about, which is I thought it was about a relationship at first, but it's actually about Johnny and his drinking habits, which is it really like opened my eye to like, oh, it's not what it first seems like, right? I love the comparison of driving and all gas, no brakes, with drinking. It's such a fun song, but it's also so serious at the same time. Like that's another thing that Bill Murray does so well is it's on the outside it seems like funny and like he's a goofy guy, but the lyrics are always so meaningful and usually hit close to home. But yeah, I think this is my album of the year just because the bonds I've created with people over it, and it was a very easy choice for me, honestly. 420cc edition.
Oh man. Well,
Good pick.
good pick. Good picks all around. Good picks all around.
We nailed it.
We did good this year.
Can't
For
believe there's
his-
two people with the same album of the year again.
Yep.
Yeah.
What is that? The third?
It's the third
time?
one. Yeah.
Third
Yeah.
time, yeah.
And it wasn't me.
My first time. My first time.
Actually, that's crazy. It's been
Yeah.
3 different sets of people.
Yeah.
So it was Justin and Jacob, then me and Jacob, and now
Yeah,
Justin and
me
Jake.
Justin.
Everyone remembers their first time, Jake.
Justin, you're on your second.
I am on my second.
Uh,
All right, Jake and Derek next year.
Bad Omens,
Bad
Derek.
Omens, that's only likely.
This is your redemption arc.
That or you just suddenly
I
get
could
really
see-
into Prada.
Prada, yeah. I
Yeah.
can see Prada.
Or Tonka.
True.
I doubt it.
This
Me
guy
and
doesn't
Mommy and
believe
Dad.
it.
then,
Doesn't
then
believe
there'll be 3 of us with the same album of the year.
I could really like that Valiant Hearts album, Justin. We'll see.
I sure hope so.
Well, that's going to do it for our 2024 award series. I hope you enjoyed. Be sure to give these albums a listen if you have not listened to them. Obviously, these are some of our favorite albums all year. We've discussed dozens of albums throughout the year, and these are our favorites. If there are any albums that you take from our recaps this year, take the ones that we talked about tonight and give them a chance. Give them another chance, even if you thought you didn't like them. I know I will be giving some of these albums that I thought I wasn't as big of a fan of another spin after tonight's conversation. That's going to wrap it up. We will have one more episode for the 2024 series, our December recap in early 2025, where we'll go over the last handful of releases that 2024 has to offer. And then the cycle repeats. With next year, we get back into doing the monthly recaps from January through November till it's time for 2025 award season.
Now featuring our faces.
Now featuring our faces. Hopefully,
And really cool hats.
and really cool hats. Hopefully, our faces are more interesting to look at than little icons. As cool as our art pieces are, I do think that it's probably more interesting to watch us be idiots.
They've
And we
done,
don't have-
they've had their time.
Yeah.
Look,
Yeah.
I knew the minute that we were going to switch to this, one, it was going to be scuffed as fuck. And 2, Jacob would be the one with the most props.
Shit.
He pulled up with 4 vinyl and a hat.
4 vinyls, a hat,
And
he's
a
got
coin.
Christmas- he's got a
And
coin,
coin
a
and a
Christmas
candle.
sweater, like this fucker is prepared.
I have trauma in the form of a coaster.
I should have grabbed my things are different.
Technically, my
No.
CD rack is a prop as well. But yeah, that's gonna wrap it up for our awards. We hope you enjoyed. Be sure to check out part 1 and part 2 where we discuss our top 5 songs and top 5 EPs of the year if you haven't listened to those already. And we will see you next year to keep talking about the new music that we are all listening to, as we have done for close to 5 years at this point.
Have a good one.
Bye.
See ya.